Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. It is a Wednesday. It is hump day. You're almost halfway through your work week. I guess you're technically right now probably exactly halfway through your work week if you're listening to the show today, because it is midday on a hump day. Glad to have you in. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC once again. It is draft night. It is draft day. I guess technically draft day. It will be draft night tonight. Bryan Brown, NBA draft. It's 2 days now. First round today, and probably nobody's watching tomorrow because how many people actually stayed watching for the entire draft when it was on one day? Not a ton, I don't think. The sickos did. I'm not sure. Anyway, we're going to still have 2 live draft shows tonight, or one tonight, one tomorrow. Spence Checketts, Gordy Chiesa, Richard Smitty Smith. What a lineup that is. Breaking down the picks, trying to prognosticate what the Jazz might do with both of their first-round picks. That starts at 6 tonight, starts at 6 tomorrow night. So listen anyway, even if you're not interested in the second round. The Jazz do have 2 picks in each round, so Jazz fans, both days are very relevant. And obviously trades are a possibility. Those draft shows, by the way, brought to you by Angora Solutions, Budweiser, and Aladdin Industries. We appreciate their support. 66 days till Utah football, Bryan Brown. So that's coming up fast and quick. We're about 2 weeks away from Big 12 Media Days, which always, for me, signals kind of the start of things. Things starting to get going as far as college football goes, because a couple weeks after that's when fall camp starts, and then we're basically into the season. So coming up, this Utah football season coming up fast and quick. But NBA draft, actually, let me give you our guest list today, of course. We're going to have the one and only Sean O'Connell joining us during his PTO. We appreciate his sacrifice, OC. We're gonna talk NBA draft with him. We're gonna have him preview the PFL semifinals going on in Chicago this week. Hopefully, a better hotel situation in Chicago than Wichita. And then we'll talk to him about what we talked a lot about yesterday. Bryan, I think, get his take on Utah football recruiting. Ryder Lions picking BYU. What does that mean for Utah going forward? So forth. Craig Bolerjack, voice of the Utah Jazz, at noon. Talk draft with him. 12:30, you'll get to hear that Bill Armstrong NHL draft media availability that we teased yesterday. Did not have time for it yesterday, so we're going to bring it to you at 12:30. It's also live on ESPN700sports.com right now if you'd like to listen in to that. And then Belle Fraser, right after that at 1 o'clock. Salt Lake Tribune, Utah Mammoth beat writer. We'll talk NHL draft and Mammoth off season with her. But let's start with the draft, Bryan.
A very good place to start.
Yes, a very good place to start. I'm looking at the mock drafts.
Cut that and make it a drop, please.
Yeah, you. Go ahead, Olivia. You have my permission. It's fine.
You should have authority over that, given the family connection that you two have.
I would laugh at you any day.
That's true. Looking at the latest mock drafts, just curious who people have the Jazz taking at 5, right? And the interesting thing, Bryan, I put it down on the show notes. These are ESPN's mock draft, Bleacher Report's mock draft, Matt Babcock's mock draft, CBS Sports, Draft Express, The Athletic, Tankathon, and NBADraft.net. The majority is Jeremiah Fears being taken at number 5 if the Jazz keep their pick. That surprises me a bit because we heard Andy Larson say the 2 guys that I have figured if VJ Edgecombe for some reason drops to 5, they're taking him. If not, it's Trey Johnson. That's been what my best guess as to what they would do and what I would prefer them to do. But Jeremiah Fears getting a lot of love from the NBA draft analysts from the various various publications.
How much of that? So, instant reaction
Yeah.
to Jeremiah Fears being the pick. You want mine?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Not a fan. I don't like small guards who can't shoot. Call me.
It's a crazy take. Cut that, Olivia. I don't like small guards who can't shoot. Why would you not like that? What's not to like?
I get the athleticism there. I get he's a young player. I get that there's a lot to like about his game. But if I'm picking in the top 5, and there's a guarantee, so from all you did a ton of research on the mock drafts. I've been listening to a bunch of podcasts, listening to Vicini. Simmons and Rosillo did a bit on it the other night, talking about how Danny Ainge's number one priority with prospects, the most important thing is shooting. And you look at some of the picks that he's made over the years, it follows suit with that, right? I think the biggest one is Markelle Fultz. Had iffy shooting stuff, was supposedly the number 1 pick.
Traded back
and took Jason Tatum, who they had number 1 on their board.
Much better shooter in college. And
seems
it's turned out to be a much better shooter in the league.
Seems like that worked out. Seems like that one panned out okay.
Well, even it's funny you say that. This was not – I don't believe this was a first-round pick, but I think of even the more obscure guys that he's taken when they had a bunch of picks when the Celtics had a bunch of picks, and I don't know why this is the name that comes right to the top of my head, but R.J. Hunter. Do you remember him from Georgia State?
I do.
He had the big buzzer beater in the NCAA tournament. All of a sudden, everyone was like, could this guy play in the NBA? He had a great shot. Celtics and Danny Ainge liked him enough to take him, I think, probably early second round, maybe late first round, because he was a good shooter. So it's funny you say that for some reason that obscure name is the first thing that comes to mind. Is that lines up with what you were saying. And what Bill Simmons and Ryan Rosillo were saying.
And to that end, I think the important clarification with Fears is that he is a great off-the-ball creator and has that skill set to get to the rim and finish.
Probably really good, or not probably. He has really good point guard-ish feel, which the Jazz could really benefit from. Isaiah Collier had a great rookie season and showed a lot of that same point guard kind of feel, but also – terrible shooter.
Yeah, Isaiah Collier likes to pass for a reason.
So, do you want another point guard, young point guard who is basically Isaiah Collier? I don't know if you want that.
It's an interesting. Really, what's unique about this situation is what happens, in those first 3 picks. Or the number 3 pick. Number 3 pick is really, like I said yesterday, it's the hinge for me. That's where this draft can go in a multitude of different directions.
Almost every one of these mocks have VJ Edgecombe to the Sixers, by the way.
And that's the pick that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
But
some of them have Ace Bailey to the Sixers, despite the reports.
That's the other one.
Canceling workouts. They're saying, we're going to take him anyway. Tony Jones kind of told us that doesn't matter to teams. If players cancel workouts, they'll still pick them. So
it seems as I kind of read through the tea leaves on that one that it's not so much Ace as it is his representation is trying to make a play. And I don't think NBA teams are really thrilled. It does feel very much like the Shedeur situation with the NFL, where
I say that when I first heard that report, I'm like, teams don't like it when you try to engineer your draft spot.
And I understand it from the perspective of you're an extremely talented individual, and up until this point, pretty much everything has gone in your direction just because you exist. That's not how it works with the greatest sports leagues in the world. They have enough talent. They don't need Ace Bailey to survive. And that's the part about this that I think
maybe Ace Bailey at 26, who's shown that he's actually made good on his immense potential. Then they go, we need you. Ace Bailey at 19, who looks like a really the definition of boomer bust prospect. Teams are going to say, yeah, we'll just take someone else.
And realistically, I think sometimes we underestimate just how much those leagues revolve around relationships. A lot of teams will draft players because they have a good relationship with whatever agent it is that the player is working with, or those are the guys that they go after in free agency. I think for a long time, the Jazz had a good relationship with Mark Bartelstein. Not so much after the whole I'm still bitter about the whole July 4th thing. I waited around all day for that, and Gordon Hayward ruined my July 4th, which was one of my favorite holidays. So, yeah, Just a little
The
side
food
note there.
didn't taste as good. The barbecue, the cookout wasn't as fun. Yeah.
All of it. It was just
Yeah,
very.
thank you, Gordon.
Yeah. Call Gail. But to that end, I think a lot of teams deal with teams that they're familiar with. We've seen the Jazz and Timberwolves make multiple deals over the scope of the last few years. I think because there is good relationship there with
Jazz and Cavs are another one.
Yep, Conley and Kobe Altman. Those two GMs clearly have a good relationship. I think that was one benefit of having Justin Zanuck as your GM is that he was an agent, so he already has a lot of relationships with those people. So all of that is to say that whether or not Ace Bailey is a good basketball player might not factor in as much as we think in terms of what's happening here. Vicini said something interesting that I thought made a lot of sense. And it was, are you drafting him to be good on your team or to be good on the next team? Because a 25-year-old, and it's clear to me that the issue is maturity. And not in the sense of like he's a bad kid, but just immature.
Yeah.
Which, as a fellow immature human being, I can relate.
Like, can relate and appreciate it.
Struggle of focus. I'm late a lot. Like, this is just kind of the world you have to live. Like, if you love me, I'm just going to apologize in advance. This is who I am. So I get a lot of that kind of stuff.
Self-awareness by you, Brian Brown.
This is how we compensate, right?
Yeah.
The difference is I don't have a beautiful fadeaway jumper and hit like extremely hard shots on the regular basis as a 6'7", 6'8" wing. So I think the really the better pick for Philadelphia, given where they're at, if they keep the pick, is probably Ace Bailey. I think the drafting VJ Edgecombe makes sense in the sense of like he's an asset and you have a ton of guards, but he's probably just going to sit on the bench, or you're going to trade him before the season starts when you find something else that you really like.
That's interesting. It definitely feels like Edgecombe is the safe pick at 3 to 5, particularly number 3 overall. Ace Bailey is the hey, we believe in this guy's upside pick. And typically teams drafting in the top 3 they're not like the Sixers, or they don't already have a lot of good NBA talent. And so teams are typically drafting on upside. So that's why for so long before we knew the draft order, Ace Bailey was looked at, could he be the number 2 guy? Could he be the number 3 guy in this draft? Dylan Harper, as the season progressed, vaulted ahead of him. But people were still like, he's still the 3rd best.
Even though they played
he's
on
still
the same
a top
team,
3
right?
prospect. Yeah.
That was kind of the unique part of that.
But yeah, there's more to it than talent. There's more to it than upside, and it's Tony Jones was good with us on Friday. If you missed that interview, search Sean O'Connell Show wherever you get your podcasts, or head to ESPN700sports.com or the app. You can listen to that. He was good with us, letting us know that it's not about basketball with Ace Bailey and the Philadelphia 76ers and whatever team decides to draft him. It's about the off-the-court stuff. Is he mature enough? Are the people around him people that teams want to work with? Because you're not, when you draft a player, when you acquire a player, you're not just bringing in that player, you're bringing in their inner circle.
Yep.
We learned that a lot with Ja Morant over the last couple of years. There's reasons why you want to stay away from a player, even if they're a really good player. And that might be the case with Ace Bailey. Again, you're good to point out there's nothing nefarious about him off the court or his inner circle, at least it's come out. So it's not like the Ja Morant situation at all in that regard, but it is in the regard of like your inner circle and your own choices off the court, how you conduct yourself off the court, whether it's innocently being immature or doing worse, can affect whether teams want you to play for them. And that's what seems to be going on with Ace Bailey. But so that's the two at almost all of these mock drafts. The ones that the prediction for the Sixers is either Ace Bailey or VJ Edgecombe, which eliminates Andy Larson's dream scenario of the Jazz being able to take VJ Edgecombe at 5 unless they move up, right? Or being able to take him unless they move up. So realistically, you are looking at there's 3 guys that all of these mock drafts have the Jazz taking. 4 guys, excuse me. Jeremiah Fears, which was the majority by one. Three of the seven mock drafts have the Jazz taking Jeremiah Fears. Both of us agree, Brian, would not be thrilled with that. I would not be thrilled with that either. Four of the seven have Trey Johnson or Ace Bailey, 2 each. So 2 have Trey Johnson, 2 have Ace Bailey, and only one has the Jazz taking Duke guard forward Con Knipple. So I wanted to ask you, Brian. Maybe we do maybe play a quick game. Who do you like the most? Who do you like the least?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you lukewarm on out of those 7? Let's start with who you like the least.
I think I was pretty clear from the opening statement that it's probably Jeremiah Fears.
Jeremiah Fears, you like the least.
Safe bet.
Okay.
And I like his game. You watch his highlights, and you're like, man, why isn't this kid going, number 1 overall? He has kind of Kyrie flair to his game with the handles, and there's some step back threes, and you're like, wait a second, he can't shoot. And then you dive into the flip side of it, and you're like, oh, this is.
Oh, then you watch the lowlights, and you went, oh.
Yeah, so, which is always the danger. Like, I think that was what I always loved about the old Draft Express videos, is that they would show you the good stuff, and you'd be like, this is the best prospect ever. And then they'd show the lowlights, and you're like, I can't. No, he can't draft. He's going to play in Europe.
Yeah.
And you go on this roller coaster of emotions. But I think I always liked just watching straight up game tape. I never watched Jeremiah Fears for a full game. I wasn't that invested in it. I know. Sorry.
That's just your anti-SEC bias.
Yeah, well, what can I say?
So he's who you like the least. For me, it's Ace Bailey. And I've said before, whether it's the behind the glass talking with OC or even last week, I said the Jazz need to take guys with they need to take a guy with star potential at top 5. And Ace Bailey qualifies as that, but all the stuff surrounding him and just how raw he still is makes me go, I don't know if I want to even risk the bust potential of Ace Bailey, even though he certainly has boom star potential, and that's something the Jazz need is star potential guys. So he's the guy I like the least, and it really is less about basketball than anything else. But some of it is the basketball that it's going to take too long to develop a guy like him, in my opinion. Who are you lukewarm on out of those?
Ace Bailey's probably my most lukewarm in the sense of
that's the person you most medium like.
Yeah, we're talking about strictly the players in the mocks, right? Because I think
of these guys in the mocks, we can expand it after this, but of these guys that in some of the top mock drafts, some of the top NBA draft analysts, the 7 guys in there: Jeremiah Fears, Trey Johnson, Ace Bailey, or Con Knipple. Or excuse me, 4 guys, 7 mocks anyway.
Yeah, the
math is not my strong suit.
We're doing it on the fly too. It's hard enough just to talk into a microphone sometimes. I know people are listening.
We have to think too.
Yeah,
come on.
You're gonna make me walk and chew gum later today? What kind of punishment is this?
On a Wednesday? Come on now.
Like a prison camp out here or something. I don't know.
Speaking of potential prison camps, I do have an update on what the heck is going on with Ryder Lyons and his mission status.
Okay.
Moving on from that.
That was a great transition. I don't know if I can finish this thought on a lukewarm Ace Bailey.
So you're lukewarm on Ace Bailey. The person you most medium suspect is Ace Bailey.
I think the talent is there. I think the bust potential is as I've done more research, it seems like it's his agent that is the big issue. And his agent is Omar Cooper. If you remember Sharif Cooper, it's his father.
Okay.
And the hard part about it is that the Cooper family kind of took Ace under their wing and basically turned him into this basketball player, just working him out. And so he's kind of taken over things for Ace. And because, again, like we talked about, young, immature kid, has been through some stuff. And so I think that's the real fracture for me. But I think if you get him into a good situation, a team like the Jazz, where it's they very much care about their players. right? And there's a lot of structure involved in that. I think
That's if there's one thing that's clear about definitive we can say about Will Hardy's first 3 years is that players feel like he cares about him.
Yeah.
He cares about them. And he communicates that, and I don't mean to say that you feel like it, but maybe he doesn't. That's just all we have to go on is players like to play for him. That's why they had the season they had where they were actively trying not to win basketball games, and he did not lose the locker room. So it's a good point by you. The Jazz are a great situation for a guy like Ace Bailey.
So I think that minimizes the potential for a bust in terms of, flaming out or, disasters in terms of like the immaturity issues, all the kind of stuff, the off the court issues that, and that term seems so negative in terms of like off the court issues, like he's out there just, doing
breaking the law or something.
doing lines of stuff.
He's not. But it's still something that you have to put into the calculus of deciding whether you want to draft the guy.
Correct. And how much effort you're really willing to put in for the amount of talent that he brings to the table. I think that's the biggest thing from a franchise perspective is, are we willing to literally assign somebody to this kid for the next 2 to 3 years and teach them how to be an adult all the time just so that we can get them to a point to where they're functional on the basketball court. Like that's essentially how you have to break it down.
That's a lot.
It is. It is asking a lot of both the individuals that you're assigning to basically re-raise this man-child he's 18 years old. Like sometimes I think we forget that these kids are so young because they don't look like it.
Yeah, so none of them are mature enough. Okay, let's be clear about that. Even Cooper Flagg, who feels like he's a no-doubt prospect, he's not mature enough because he's just not old enough to be mature enough. He doesn't have enough life experience to be mature enough.
Very, very solid point. But, I think Flagg is different because he handles his business and the work ethic is there. And so he
seems a lot more mature.
His trajectory is a lot more, I think, projectable.
Just to say that if you're going to use that as the only determination why you shouldn't draft someone, you're not going to draft anybody.
Correct. 100%.
So you have to – there's levels to this, absolutely.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if Omar Cooper, by happenstance, is listening right now, it's like, hey, man, like, we get it.
Yeah.
We understand it. But these are legitimate conversations that you have to have as a franchise, So that would be my contrast with it is that talent, that shot-making ability, is it worth it for that? So that's where I'm lukewarm on it because he makes some insane shots. The athleticism is there. The defensive pop in terms of, like, he's not a consistent defender, but when he has the ability,
he's engaged, he can be awesome.
Yep, he can make some great plays. So all that stuff is there with him. So that's why he's more on my lukewarm side of things. And also, I think just the conversation we had earlier about, like, Danny Ainge leans towards pedigree and shooting. And Ace Bailey has both of those.
He does. He absolutely does. It's a tie for me on who I'm most lukewarm on. It's Knipple and Fears. Knipple probably I'd be more happy if they drafted Knipple than Fears.
Mm-hmm.
We like Knipple.
I like Con.
Con! But he has no star potential, which is my problem which is why I'm only lukewarm on him. The other thing is he's measured 6'5"-ish. He plays more like he's 6'1". And that's not necessarily his jumping ability, that's just how he plays. And okay, if you think, okay, let's develop that guy into a point guard, okay, at 6'5", sure, a 6'5" guy who plays more like 6'1" can be great in that position, but this guy is going to be a wing in the NBA, and you need guys who play bigger than they are, or at least their size, not smaller than they are. So that's my thing with Con Knipple. I think that he is the safest pick out of all these guys, but I think in the top 5, you don't want to pick the safest pick. You want to make a pick that has some risk, and
the Jazz
Bailey would certainly be that risk guy, but the guy who feels like higher reward, high risk, high reward. Ace Bailey feels like high risk, potentially low reward, is Trey Johnson for me, which is why I like Trey Johnson the most out of the guys that the Jazz are mocked to. He's got the same kind of stuff that Ace Bailey has, but he's shown a lot more maturity, and he's just shown a lot more consistency this year than Ace Bailey did with Texas and Ace Bailey did at Rutgers. So that would be my ideal pick out of if it's one of these four guys that goes to the Jazz at 5 and the Jazz keep the pick, of course, I would prefer that they take Trey Johnson.
And to your point, Trey Johnson, 6'4", 6'5", measured at 6'4" and 3/4 inches, but has a 6'10" wingspan.
Yeah. So the defensive potential's there if you can get him to buy in on that end.
Mm-hmm. And can Absolutely. Shoot the lights out too.
And you mentioned Danny Ainge loves to draft shooters.
Loves shooters.
I'm thinking they're going to take Trey if they keep the pick and VJ, and maybe they would take VJ over Trey if both are available. But I think that they might take Trey anyway.
I would bump Con Knippel up to my most, along with Trey Johnson as well.
Okay.
The downside of Trey Johnson is the finishing at the rim.
Yeah.
That's where people have kind of identified his weakness. And then the comp that I heard was Devin Booker for Trey Johnson in just the sense that he can shoot the lights out. And I think that is something that the Jazz would really like to have.
That's the kind of star potential the Jazz need to accelerate this rebuild. Absolutely.
There is a side of me that almost wonders if maybe Malawach isn't the pick.
See, I wrote, just to go off the board, I did write him as one of my lukewarm guys too, because you already have Walker Kessler, number one, and this would be like this would be like, hey, let's get another guy that's exactly like our guy. And sure, having more than one, having a backup center that's as good as your starting center as a rim runner and rebounder and shot blocker, great, more the merrier. But also, you're going to invest a top 5 pick on that. That's why I'm lukewarm on it. If they were picking 10, if they were picking 7, 8 in this draft, Bryan, I'd be like, yeah, sure, take a really good center in Kaman Malawach. I don't like it at 5.
That's fair, and I also think there may be. At one point in time, I thought this was going to be a really slow offseason. Then I started to think, whoa, it's going to be really hyped up. And now we've already seen, 4 or 5 trades before the draft even happened. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are some moves made on draft night. And it seems like teams are more open. For a long time, it was, we'll just stay put and make the safe pick. It seems like teams are more open to dealing nowadays. And maybe some of that is just cap related. I wouldn't be super surprised if the Jazz traded back some way, somehow. But that would mean that there's somebody down there that wants whatever player lands to them at 5. And I just don't know, like, if it's VJ Edgecombe, then you don't trade the pick.
Right.
You know?
And I would say the same thing for Trey Johnson. If it's one of those two guys, don't trade it. Just pick the guy.
Yeah.
If it's one of these other guys, I'd be open to trading back or trading up, whatever.
So there's so many potential possibilities on the table. I think the most likely scenario is the Jazz probably draft Trey Johnson. I think that's the one that probably goes through. But if you could somehow rig it, right? Because we all love Gordy's got us pegged. We love conspiracy theories.
We love conspiracy theories.
How would you want it rigged? Would you want it rigged to where VJ Edgecombe falls to the Jazz at 5? Or what would be your ideal scenario?
See, I think I like Trey more than VJ.
Really?
I think I do, but I don't. I know I'm in the minority on that.
Because of the shooting?
Because of the shooting, and VJ looks to me like a guy who certainly could end up being an all-star at some point, but not necessarily a perennial build your team around a contender kind of star. Trey, well, I'm not predicting that's how it's going to be. He gives me those vibes that he could be that. He could be that. So that's why I might like Trey at 5 more than VJ, even though I'm in the minority.
The interesting thing about VJ Edgecombe to me is the athleticism, because it is clear every time he steps on the court, he is the best athlete out there.
That's true.
And if you have that first step, that ability to get by guys, and he can jump out of gym, defensively, the mindset, he's killing it in all the interviews. All that stuff to me makes me think, okay, that's a skill that translates.
And killing it in the interviews. That's a reason why the Sacramento Kings really like Tyrese Halliburton, by the way. And that has shown since he stepped on a basketball court, just how great he was in interviews, how much he projected to be a great leader, has been evident from the time he stepped on the court for the first Sacramento Kings and now, of course, the Indiana Pacers. So that's not that you shouldn't discount that, and that might be a thing that makes him one of the main things that makes him looked at as a better prospect than Trey Johnson. Gotta go to a break here, and then we'll welcome in the host of the show, Sean O'Connell. Host of the show, not today. We're hosting for him today, but Sean O'Connell is next with us. But I wanted to also put this out here. Brian Windhorst is reporting that several teams in the top 10 are making offers to the Celtics for Jaylen Brown and Derek White. This, of course, comes after Boston traded away Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis on the same day yesterday. So it begs the question, is a former Boston Celtics president of basketball operations and a former Boston Celtics assistant GM, are they among the people calling the Celtics with their top 10 pick? Yes, I'm talking about the Ainge family. If you didn't pick that up, Danny Ainge and Austin Ainge. Oh, yeah, they have history with the Celtics. They drafted Jaylen Brown. Austin Ainge was in the front office that brought Derek White to Boston. Are they one of the teams calling for one of these guys? And should they be? Maybe we'll pose that question to OC next. We'll certainly talk about it with Craig Bolerjack at noon. But Sean O'Connell is next here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Imagine that. James Peterson, Brian Brown filling in today on NBA Draft Day. Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Time to welcome in the host of the Sean O'Connell Show on his own show. Yes, Sean O'Connell. He's on the phone with us. I don't know if he's in Chicago yet or on his way to Chicago, but he will be there later in the week for PFL stuff. OC, what's going on? Welcome to your show.
Oh, thank you, James. Appreciate that. And I am now firmly in the Midwest in Chicago.
You are? Okay.
Yes.
Tell us the hotel situation in Chicago. Better than Wichita?
So far, so good. I'm not going to jinx it by offering glowing recommendations or anything like that, but so far, hot water and elevators working in this hotel. So we will keep our fingers crossed that remains the case.
What a classy joint.
I'm going to leave a 5-star Google review and just mention that both of those things work. Nothing else.
Bryan was concerned.
I was concerned. It was the first question I asked James on Tuesday when I got here. I was like, "Is OC okay? Did he make it up the stairs?"
For now, I haven't had to take the stairs, but I feel like you guys are wishing that upon me for some reason, and I don't like it.
Okay, airing of grievances is Friday, OC, so let's just cool it there a little bit. So we spent the whole first segment, and I want to give you a chance to preview Friday's PFL semis, but I wanted to start this out talking NBA draft because it is draft day. Bryan and I spent the first segment. I went through some of the top NBA draft analysts' latest mock drafts. What's interesting is there was 7 of them that I looked at. 3 of them have them taking Jeremiah Fears out of Oklahoma. That's the majority. 2 have Trey Johnson, 2 have Ace Bailey, and 1 has Con Knippel. If that's the only group you can choose from at 5, OC, who do you like the best? Who do you like the least? And are there some that you're just lukewarm on?
Well, I think that because of the situation the Jazz are in as a franchise, I would probably hope for it to be Ace Bailey. I think he has the highest ceiling, but also maybe the lowest floor. And so it's, in my opinion, worth the risk. Con Knippel feels like a pretty safe pick. I actually think Jeremiah Fears falls into that category as well. And I think Ace Bailey is the guy that, you could get the greatest variance in his NBA success, but that is at the top end as well as at the low end. And it's not like the Jazz are one good pick away from being in the finals in 2 or 3 years, right? I mean, this is a franchise that I will be somewhat surprised if there's no movement beyond just drafting here in the near future or even today. But this is a franchise that needs to take some big swings. And even if you're going to miss, you can say at least we delivered on the big game hunting kind of a thing. So that would probably be my rudimentary assessment. But one thing that is lost in the fact that the Jazz fell to number 5 is that there are a bunch of good players. Every name that you just mentioned is a player that should be able to help a team. Now, there's a difference between being able to help a team and being able to carry a team. And the Jazz are looking for someone that can help carry a team. But there's a lot of good players in this draft, and I guess even better players in next year's draft. So the Utah Jazz have big decisions to make.
As someone who has to talk about sports every day on the radio, OC, this question is more personally for you. What's the best result that can come out of this draft for you in terms of how you're going to talk about the Jazz for the next year? Because unless there's some sort of massive trade, I don't know that anything really changes the face of the franchise in the immediate future.
Yeah, the best outcome would be a massive trade, right? It would be the best outcome from a sports talk perspective would be the Jazz trying to get up to number 3 or number 2, if that's even the possibility, which I don't think it is, by moving Lauri Markkanen in probably a 3-team trade or something like that. That would be the best sports radio outcome. And then the second best sports radio outcome is that you draft somebody and he immediately gets arrested for something we had no idea about. Like
a Laramie Tunsil level event.
Yes.
Let's not do that.
From the Utah Jazz perspective, that's the worst outcome. So I'm not personally rooting for that.
I don't think that player would have Jazz DNA, OC. I don't think so. Shout out to Dennis Lindsey.
Yes, I don't. Look, they're going to do their due diligence and make sure that that's not who you're drafting. But from a sports talk radio perspective, I mean, you're talking summertime radio here. That would be as interesting conversationally as it gets.
It's interesting that Bryan asked that question and that you answered it that way, because I don't know if you saw this. Brian Windhorst from ESPN is reporting that several teams in the top 10 have made contact with the Celtics for Jaylen Brown and Derek White. Of course, Boston traded away Holiday and Porzingis in the same day yesterday, so teams with good draft capital in the top 10 are seeing that as, hey, are you willing to trade everybody? So,
yep.
would that be would that qualify as a big enough trade to be good for to be good sports talk radio fodder for the rest of the summer? I think it would be if it's Jaylen Brown. Not so sure about Derek White. What say you?
Yeah, I think for Jaylen Brown, sure, and I think that you're talking about. I mean, look, that's not still. You're not doing anything that's going to deliver you a championship roster. I don't think that's a move that the Jazz would be overly interested in at this point necessarily, depending on what you have to trade to get a player like that back. But yeah, absolutely, it would be interesting from a talking point standpoint. But what does that do? That gets you into the play-in next year, maybe? And it seems like Jazz fans want to compete, but would be okay competing hard and not winning. So it ends up us, spinning our wheels on very similar conversations to what we had this year. And I don't love that idea.
We're talking NBA draft right now, but there's also NHL draft coming up at the end of this week. Which one of the off seasons for these two franchises has you most intrigued right now, OC?
No, it's Mammoth by far. I mean, far more interested in the Mammoth now.
In a Mammoth size gap?
It's Mammoth-sized interest.
Really digging your tusks into things?
You guys want to keep going?
Go ahead, OC.
Get it out of your system. No, it's fine. Anytime.
Are you regretting that I chose Brian Brown to be my co-host in your absence now?
A little bit.
Not at all. I just didn't know that he was as enthusiastic about puns as you are.
Oh,
I thought that was like
he might be even more so than me.
Yeah, that might have been the transition from us being work friends to being real life friends. Was our love of a good pun.
Well, I thought that was exclusive to James and like people over 60, but here we are.
I act like I'm 60 years old sometimes. Just lots of naps during the day, so it's fine.
The Mammoth off season is a lot more interesting to me, not only because their draft pick at number 4 is the most unrealistic, optimistic outcome, but also because that's a team that is, no matter what happens in the off season, they're far closer to the playoffs than the Utah Jazz are. I mean, even if teams were just like wildly irresponsible in unloading important players for few assets to the Utah Jazz, you're probably borderline playoff team at best. I think that even if you add, a guy to this roster or several guys to this roster for the Utah Mammoth who aren't even going to be on NHL ice in the next 2 or 3 years, we're still talking about a team that should make the playoffs next year. That's without them using draft capital to acquire any veteran help. That's without them a big game hunting, to use a term that the ownership and the franchises in Salt Lake City have used. Like, even if you just have the same roster you had this year, you're probably competing for a playoff spot next year just because of the internal growth. So that offseason is a lot more fascinating, a lot more interesting, because the possible outcomes are a lot more interesting.
Yeah, can't disagree with you there. We're talking with Sean O'Connell on the Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson, Brian Brown, sitting in for OC for the rest of the week here. Wanted to transition to a conversation that Brian and I had yesterday. We spent a lot of time on summer recruiting for college football teams, for Utah in particular. So wanted to get you in on a couple of the poll questions I put out there, OC.
Ooh, how much I love a good poll question.
You have converted me to the poll question. So in your absence, I've been keeping up the poll questions here. So yesterday's was how important should in-state recruiting still be for Utah? And the choices were still very important, or not as much as it was in the past? What do you say?
Okay. I say more important than it's ever been.
That's where we landed.
Because, well, for two reasons. Because Utah high school football is better than it's ever been and continues to grow, more Division I, like Power 4 high-level talents are coming out of our home state than has ever been the case in the past. So you want to win from an actual just getting good football players perspective, you need to stay focused on your own backyard. And the, I guess, more ethereal concept there is like you've got to win a perception battle that you're a good place to be for your in-state guys in order to convince elite recruits from other states to come to your school, right? Like if the in-state guys don't even want to be there, you've got a 3, 4, 5-star guy from the state of Utah that's not even considering the University of Utah. Why would a kid from Texas, right? These kids all communicate with each other through social media now. They all have, they all cross over at these camps and things like that. So it's more important than it ever was for Utah to win the elite in-state recruit. And, now you've got an in-state rival in BYU that is making some serious strides in recruiting. So that's another reason why it's more important than it ever was, because you certainly don't want to lose out to top in-state recruits. You never wanted to lose them to Oregon. You never wanted to lose them to USC. It's a lot more damaging if you're losing them to your rival.
The second question we put out was how do you feel about the job Utah has done recruiting this offseason? Obviously, they've needed to turn around this roster because there's a lot of roster turnover. And the choices I put were great, I feel great about it, or I expected them to do more. Where do you land?
There's 4 options that you can make on polls, James. So
okay. I did 3 for each, and the third one was I know you weren't going to choose this one. Tell me when it's August. So these were the ones that I knew you were going to choose.
Okay, all right. Well, the thing
I know you might be more in the middle on this one. I could see that.
I've been pretty consistent with my fence sitting and my middling when it comes to recruiting, because there's so much unknown, right? And like there's reason to celebrate when you get a kid who you think is going to be great. Celebrate when he signs and then wait and see. There's a reason to celebrate when you have somebody who's like a big-time in-state recruit, because you're winning that perception battle as well. But even then, wait and see. There have been way too many examples of times when a highly recruited player doesn't really work out, and when a nobody recruit ends up being one of the star players of your program. And especially at the University of Utah, that has been the case. So as long as Utah doesn't drop below like 60 in the national recruiting rankings, because those services do a very good job. They're better at their evaluations than they've ever been. As long as Utah stays above that like middle of the pack line of demarcation for me, I'm like, okay, that is all the raw material that this coaching staff needs. That you're going to get good players and turn them into great players. You're going to get great players, like 1 or 2 of those, and turn them into elite NFL prospects. I still trust the developmental system that Utah's got. So I don't get overly enamored with anyone who's a 5-star recruit. I don't get discouraged by someone who's a 2-star recruit, because all that matters is what you end up being on college football Saturdays, and Utah is still very, very good at maximizing what that is going to be. Now, you want the raw product, you want the 4 and the 5-star, the starting point to be higher, but I don't get worried.
See, so that last line makes me think you're a tell me when it's August guy.
I kind of am a tell you when it's August guy. And I'm more of like a tell me when it's August 2027.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean?
Give it a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, because like think of like a Cody Barton. You know what I mean? Cody Barton came from Brighton High School, and he was on the team because his older brother was on the team, and he was going to be a special teams guy. I think he was like honorable mention All-State or something like that. He was like a low 3-star, if I'm not mistaken. What did he end up being in the program? That matters. You know what I mean? I'm not even using Eric Weddle as the most obvious example. I'm not even going to use Cole Bishop as another super obvious example. And yeah, the Clark Phillips thing, that worked out really, really well. The Devin Lloyd thing worked out really, really well. The Zach Moss thing worked out really, really well. There's examples of them turning great players into even greater players. But, like, you can turn average players into elite players, and they've done it. So just keep me at or above average in the recruiting rankings, in the star ratings, and I'm going to be okay with Utah's class.
To that end, I think I'll just add that the transfer portal and the movement in college football has probably added to the whole malaise around actually following recruiting right now. To your point, Utah has always done a good job of identifying the kind of players that they like and that they can develop, and I think that's been part of this struggle. I say all that because James and I had another conversation yesterday about what should be the goal for this program, because at one point in time I think it was trending towards we want to try and compete for a national championship, but we're countering that the goal needs to be build your roster so that you can compete for the Big 12 championship. And I guess the question would be, do you feel like Utah's doing that right now?
Yes. And I think that if you put truth serum in, like everyone says, we want to win every game, we want to win a national championship. This is an unpopular thing to say on the home of the Utes. Guys, that ship has sailed. Utah's never going to win a national championship in college
Olivia's
football.
clipping that right now. We're gonna use that later.
It makes me sick to say that, but the reality of the situation is that teams like Utah, BYU, Arizona State, Ole Miss for that matter, are not winning national championships unless something freakish happens, like really, really wild in any given season. And yes, there are 1% and 2% chances of things playing out that way, but the national championship is now the exclusive territory of blue blood college football programs. The Big 12 championship, the conference championship, inclusion in the college football playoff, and all the benefits that come with that, that's open for anybody. That's open for Boise State. That's open for Utah State. That's open for Utah, for BYU. That's open for Texas Tech. That's open for whomever. But the national championship, getting through 3 or 4 top 15, top 16 college football games in a row at the end of a season means you have depth. And to have depth, that means you have $20 and $30 million rosters. And unless somebody sells a company and pulls a Ryan Smith for the University of Utah, that ain't happening anytime soon. So competing for a Big 12 championship is the goal. And if something truly unique, special, incredible, implausible happens, then we'll all enjoy it. But, I mean, even Utah's very, very, very best undefeated, flawless teams never lost a game. We're not national champions. There's no reason for us to believe that moving forward, you're going to have teams better than that do win a national championship.
Yeah, and I know that's going to be a very unpopular thing with the diehard Utah fans among our listeners, but it's not completely off base, OC, and that's kind of the point that we made yesterday on the show, Bryan and I, is that you got to look at the most attainable thing first, and that's at least getting to the Big 12 championship game. And if you can get that far, you have a shot at winning your conference championship and making the playoff.
I would point at go ahead, OC.
Well, the other thing about it is, like, we've fallen into this trap in college football of pretending that the only meaningful outcome of your season is winning a national championship. And that's just not true. It hasn't ever been true in college football before, and it's certainly not true of Utah now. Yes, increased success leads to higher expectations, and it, like, achieving a goal that in the 1970s was not attainable, like a Pac-12 championship for Utah football in the 1970s was a pie-in-the-sky dream. Didn't make sense. Then you get to that level where, we just won back-to-back. Now we need to chase a national championship. Sure, raise your expectations as your performance elevates. But don't forget that there are, 133 teams in Division I football right now, and only one of them gets to be a champion every year. And in the last, 3 decades, it's actually been like a dozen schools that have been able to share that honor at different times amongst themselves. they're not the only meaningful programs in the country. They're not the only programs that deserve a fan base and a celebration and excitement around their preseason and things like that. There are a lot of more important things. Well, not more important, but there are a lot of other alternate outcomes that are incredibly meaningful for any college football program. And that starts with a conference championship. So it kind of starts and ends with a conference championship for me. If you can win a Big 12 championship, you can win a Pac-12 championship, you can win a Big 10 championship or whatever, like that, you get to wear a ring for the rest of your life. You're going into your college's Hall of Fame if you can do that. National championships are rarefied air for people with more money than Utah's got.
Yeah, it's a good point, OC, and like I said, we're in agreement with you here, Bryan and I. Before we let you go, preview these PFL semifinals going on Friday in Chicago, including the main card, Fabian Edwards and is it Josh Silveira?
Josh Silveira, yeah.
Silveira, okay.
Okay, so this is the big boys, all right? So you guys are both big boys. These are middleweights, light heavyweights, and heavyweights. So the three largest weight classes, which means big boys, big power, knockouts.
Our kind of people, Bryan.
Your kind of people. And Fabian Edwards, brother of Leon Edwards, the former UFC champ, he's been like tantalizingly close to having a major championship around his waist so many times in his career. Josh Silveira, raised by the son of one of the pioneers, not raised by the son, he is the son of, raised in the gym. One of the MMA pioneers, Conan Silveira, brought him up like from the time he was 5 years old on the mats in the gym. So like that's a great main event. And we've got a bunch of other really cool fights. A theme that has developed in this PFL World Tournament has been rising stars. You have young people trying to break through against more established veterans. That's happening in my weight class, 205 pounds. A guy named Sullivan Colley from Arizona taking on Phil Davis, who's been at the highest level for a long time, and he's 40 years old, and now it's probably time to sort of pass the torch, but he's good enough to be clinging to it still at 40. So there's a lot of reasons to watch the card. ESPN Plus for the undercard, ESPN for the main card, and tune in on Friday night.
You'll probably see a much more well-rested OC than you saw in Wichita last week too, because he's in a much classier hotel.
And I'll smell a little better because I'll have taken a nice long shower instead of just splashing the cold water on myself.
Thank you, OC. We'll talk to you again. We'll talk to you again. Do airing of grievances Friday, but enjoy Chicago until then.
All right, enjoy the draft. Thanks everyone for tuning in while Pun Fest goes on the Sean O'Connell Show.
That's host of the show, Sean O'Connell. OC joining us from Chicago. Be sure to tune in on Friday night to that PFL semifinals in the World Tournament going on ESPN and ESPN Plus. An NBA draft show tonight. Our live show starts at 6. Spence Checketts, Gordy Chiesa, Richard Smitty Smith, all breaking down the picks, prognosticating what the Jazz should do, what they will do, reacting to what they do tonight in the first round of the NBA draft. The show is brought to you by Budweiser, Angora Solutions, and Aladdin Industries, again, starting at 6. We blew through our clock, Bryan, so that means we got to get to Craig Bolerjack on the other side. In about 3 minutes, the voice of the Utah Jazz will talk more NBA draft, Jazz offseason with Bowler right here on the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM is welcoming Nate Jackson to Kingsbury Hall November 7th. Tickets are on sale now. And, tickets are on sale now. Check that out. November 7th, Nate Jackson at Kingsbury Hall. Comedy show. Should be a good one. Hour 2 of the Sean O'Connell Show begins with more NBA draft talk, Utah Jazz talk. By the way, if you're not able to listen to your car and on the radio, 700 AM, 92.1 FM, of course. There's a bunch of other ways you can listen. The Listen Live tab on ESPN700sports.com, the ESPN 700 app. There's a play button on there, and it's free in your preferred app store. You can tell your smart speaker to play ESPN 700. Of course, we're on YouTube at ESPN 700 Sports Utah there. And you can podcast us. Just search the Sean O'Connell Show wherever you get great podcasts. Also, there's a podcast tab on ESPN700sports.com and an on-demand section of the ESPN 700 app. But NBA Draft Talk continues to start Hour 2 with the one and only Craig Bolerjack, voice of the Utah Jazz. Bowler, how's it going?
James, I'm great. Let's get this thing rolling. I'm ready.
Let's go. So I wanted to start with this kind of breaking news from earlier this morning. Bryan Windhorst from ESPN is reporting that several teams in the top 10 are contacting the Celtics about Jaylen Brown and Derek White. Of course, the Jazz have two guys in their front office, both with the last name Ainge, who have ties to the Celtics. I'm not gonna ask you necessarily opinion on this, if the Jazz should do it or not, unless you want to offer that. But the question I was thinking of is, if they get one of those guys, if they're one of those teams contacting, and they've trade number 5 and whatever else they would need to get one of those guys, how much would that accelerate the Jazz's rebuild, Bowler?
You know, James, that's the biggest question. What is Austin's total plan, and how much does Ryan give him a green light, I think, tonight? That, to me, is the most intriguing part. I've been through a lot of these, as have you, and I always say, summer's big. You know, this draft is going to make an impact. But I think, honestly, over the last 20 years or so, this one impacts the Jazz in a very large way. I mean, the D. Will of 05, when Sloan was still coaching, gave the Jazz their first bona fide big guard. Stockton, of course, was a little smaller, but the toughest and allegedly the dirtiest, right, in the NBA. Come on. But no. But they went a different direction that night with Deron Williams. And this one's so intriguing. What does Austin Ainge do? His dad's left him a lot, by the way. I believe 9 first-round picks between now and 31. You make a great analogy of the connection with the Boston Celtics and Brad Stevens. I mean, are they on the phone? Don't know. Derek White, I like a lot. And, you know, it's interesting to see, again, what the Jazz will do with the youth they have. And I always go back to this echo in my head when Will Hardy told us just at the beginning of his second year how difficult it is to make this league, James, but also, you know, you have to show that you belong. And the Jazz have gone through now 3 years of multiple data points on a lot of players, and they've got to make some tough decisions on actually who stays, who goes. And very few know what the data points directly indicate, but do they move younger players who they don't believe can fit what the Jazz want to accomplish? And that, to me, is another intriguing part of this. And how do you build out a roster when you're full at the moment, and you're going to have to move some players to make room for the draft picks of 2025? And, you know, I think they have to land a player with experience and playoff, savvy to be able to help make this team grow and show what it takes to be a playoff team, and obviously beyond a champion. So I think everything's on the table, James. I do. I think, I don't want to overplay it because I could be totally wrong, but my gut tells me 2025 is uber important for the future of this franchise. Every summer is, but this one's more. The draft picks that are available, the movement that's available, some cash in hand if you open up more space and move a player or two. What does John Collins do? I'm going to guess on the 27th of this month he'll opt in to $26 million, and after he opts on July 1, do you try to move players? It's, I don't know. This one's intriguing, James. I'm excited to see at number 5 how this thing starts. And is there a domino that falls before the Jazz, right? Between 1 and 4, and does that impact the Jazz and their decision at the 5 spot?
Bowler, last year was a tough stretch, I think, for Jazz fans, for broadcasters, for anybody who loves or follows this franchise. And it's not just because of the losing, it's because there didn't seem like there was much hope for the future. How much pressure do you think the front office feels to get this thing turned around? And do you think that would influence what's going to happen at all in the next few months?
I do. I think they tried something that is odd for the Jazz franchise, and that is to take a bunch of young guys, put them on the floor, let the veterans sit and watch and help them teach and learn, and teach them the right way to be pros. I still think you have to have a mix, my opinion, only that you got a mix in this league. And then it takes a while, obviously, for what Oklahoma City was able to do just a few nights ago. In 7, by the way, and with Tyrese Halliburton down on the floor with a torn Achilles. I mean, a lot of viewers, I guess the viewership's down, and that's a whole nother subject. But you have to have players that are going to be engaged with one another, and you got to play defense. And I think you're going to be looking for a combination, and it really, that's the question. Can you find guys who are dedicated to play both ends of the floor? And I think Will Hardy said it best at the end of the year. These guys have to be in better shape to get through 82 games. So, the 17 wins, I got to be honest, it was tough. But we also, I think fans embraced the fact they were watching Filipowski, Walker in his 3rd year coming back from a sophomore slump, improving. I think there was some wow factor with Isaiah Collier getting a lot of minutes after they decided to move Keontae into the 6th spot. And so I think they were engaged, but when the lottery came and you had a 14% chance and you dropped to 5 and a Dallas team with 1.8% chance jumps into the front seat, you go, wow, was it worth it? Now, you got a 5 pick, but they wanted more. And so I think with Austin coming aboard and his early comments, if I'm not mistaken, was we're not going that direction again, or someone, I think it was OC who asked, are you going to go the tank route?
Won't see that this year, he said, Bowler.
Yeah, won't see it. And so, I think I'm old school, and I think a lot of people are where you want competition. Fans deserve that. And I think the Jazz fans, though, I don't remember a night that Delta Center didn't have a raucous crowd in the building and nearly at capacity. And I appreciate that. I mean, I think, Ryan does too. The other part of this equation is you have a hockey team building a fan base. You have an arena that's will be given a 3-year facelift, and its first part of it's being done right now. Then you have the Olympics, and then you also have a downtown renovation around the arena. And I think all those things have to play a factor into the thinking of what the Jazz need to do and want to do. So this 1-year experiment or 2-year experiment, they may have captured a couple, 3 players they can see on their roster for the next, 5 or 6 years. I mean, in the NBA, as we know, every roster moves and changes, but you still have to have the core pieces. And I still think that's what the Jazz are trying to find. And tonight, that core piece hopefully is at 5. And however they get there is the most intriguing part. And, you can always say Cooper Flagg and Harper are 1-2. I mean, is Edgecombe there at 3? Does something happen there that impacts the Jazz at 5? That's what we're going to watch and wait for. So to answer the question, I mean, in a rambling way, yeah. I think the Jazz fan base got through it, but I think the Jazz also, along with the front office, realized it's time to move ahead. I'm only speaking for myself, but Austin Ainge is going to make that decision tonight, and to see what Justin Zanuck and Ryan and Danny how they're going to play this.
Talking with Craig Bolerjack, voice of the Utah Jazz, every Jazz broadcast, a TV broadcast, along with Thurl Bailey. Pleasure to talk with you, Bowler, here on the Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson, Brian Brown filling in for OC. Everything I read about the Jazz's approach, Bowler, suggests to me that their goal is to find a potential star with the number 5 pick. How likely do you think it is that they'll be able to do that, though?
Well, let's run down the guys. I mean, Flags to Dallas and Dylan Harper to the Spurs, on my guess. The Baylor guard and VJ. Then comes Ace, who didn't work out, by the way. That's intriguing to me. He turned down everyone. And he's projected to go top 5. Charlotte, do the Jazz touch him? Does he have attitude issues? But he's got great size, 6'8", and a little over 200 pounds. You know, everyone I've seen, the 5 spot, you know, it's mostly kind of either Trey Johnson or Jeremiah Fears, the Texas shooting guard, and also Jeremiah from Oklahoma, who's a point guard / 2 guard too. I don't know. I mean, they always say, guys, that great teams are led, right? And you have to have the centerpiece is what gets you into your offense, the tempo and the pace. And so if that's the case, the Jazz would want a diamond, not a rough, but one that's kind of already polished, right? That can actually jump in and make this team go. I know Will Hardy likes up to get the ball in the front court fast. I think that's why Isaiah got the starting nod, was let's go, let's push, let's get more shots up, let's move the ball and find the open man. So I think those 2 players, if available, are going. Now, do they take Ace, who's 6'8", and, you know, some comparisons have been on Michael Porter Jr., you know, it's hard to say, but I think it's going to have to be domino effect. Does it fit perfectly into place? Maybe the top 5 do, but there's always something that surprises you, or some trade is made and somebody jumps in and needs another player that maybe is not on the list in that top 5, top 6. So that's what I'll be watching for tonight, you know, as well. But we're going to find out at about, 12:20, so 6 o'clock. The Jazz pick around 6:30. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
By the time everything happens. So you're about 6 hours out by the time we start to kind of figure this whole thing out and how things are going to drop. And then you have to start talking about 21. Do the Jazz find someone they like, and do they use some of those picks in the back pocket of Austin Ainge now, and do they try to jump up to grab another player they may think will be a key part of the Utah future?
Craig, how much are you watching this draft with an eye on what's going to happen here with Summer League?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I like Summer League. I like to get back in the seat and just get involved again. Kind of gets you restarted after being off the floor for a couple of months and out of the booth. You know, there's a potential here that we'll see quite a few top picks coming into Salt Lake. And I always enjoy, you know, eyeballing what the young players, who they are, and what you think, and what the GMs thought of them, you know, as well. And I think it's good, man, for the Jazz to get, you know, playing time. I don't see Walker Kessler. I don't think he can. He's 3rd year out. But there's going to be a lot of young. I don't know if Taylor Hendricks is going to be given the green light after his injury of a year ago. But it's intriguing to me to see the younger guys who accept the invitation to come out and continue to get better. I'm sure Collier will get asked to. Flip is going to play. You know, the team's coming in with Memphis and San Antonio. I mean, it's always fun to see, you know, who they put on the floor and what's the development. You can almost eyeball sometimes, honestly, who you think may be a sleeper, who got lucky. And I remember when Trae Young came to town his first year, he struggled in Summer League in Salt Lake. Now, he got a little better in Vegas, but he couldn't hit a 3 to save his life. And, you know, he's been mentioned a lot in some movement by Atlanta. And, you know, Porzingis is now a Hawk. That's a big move, by the way, yesterday to get a big. I think Quinn Snyder's used to having a 7'1", 7'4" guy. I think he is 7'2". So he likes a big player to build around in Atlanta. But that's, you know, there may be more movement tonight. I wouldn't be a bit surprised. And then free agency coming up in a week's time. will be really intriguing. How much money is going to be spent, the apron, all that stuff comes into play. That's beyond my pay grade, by the way. I let those guys worry about the money. But it's crazy, though, who the people you have to make it all come together. And when you make trades, you got to come in a small percentage from one another, and you have to throw in a pick, just to make it work, second round, whatever it may be. But, I do like Summer League. I love watching the Vegas games as well because I think you get a jump start on who got lucky, who has a great scouting department, and who maybe be the steal of the draft. I know it's only just a small, piece, and you have to learn to play 82 in this league. And usually it takes you now even more time to develop because you're 18 coming out after 1 year in college. And that's the one thing. I talked to Thurl a lot about this. Look what Thurl accomplished. I mean, he played 4 years. He's a national champion, number 7 pick in the draft in 1983. And he was more ready to jump into the daily grind and the responsibility that comes with being a top pick in the top 10. And I think we're watching now, you have to roll the dice in this league now more and more because you're not sure what you truly have. And, people want to win now. And it's only once in a while a LeBron James or a Kobe Bryant, comes around. And I was thinking of Cody Williams for some reason. But Kobe comes around and you go, wow, they've got it. They're ready. They're mature. And there's going to be little mistakes along the way, obviously at 18. But now you have to deal with it on a daily basis, and a coach has to be uber patient to try to deal with the different egos and how different young men develop. And I got to give Will Hardy a lot of credit. I've been around him now 3 years, and, man, he's had to deal with a lot. And he gets it. He's developing. But at the same time, in his heart and soul, after being with Popovich for such a long time, you don't think he wants to win and taste the playoffs and a championship or a Western Conference final, no doubt, because that's all he knows. And I think he's done a nice job trying to guide these players through, the obstacle course of the NBA. But also I think he realizes now more than ever who actually can make that tough, as he said himself, this is a tough league. Some will make it, some will not. This may be the first time we see that statement come to fruition where the players he started with, some may not return in 2025, 26. And that to me is intriguing too, because he's had a long time now, three seasons to help these players grow. And if they're not making the progress or the development that the franchise needs, then the Jazz obviously will make moves. So that's another thing as this summer progresses on how it's going to work out.
Was that 2019 Utah Jazz Summer League that you remember Trae Young struggling in? You've got me going down memory lane here.
Is he if he's 7 years? I think he's 7 years in. So
yeah,
it could
I think it was around that time. That would have been.
Yeah.
Was he involved in that little summer league scuffle with Grayson Allen? Do you remember that when the guy
that was the first?
Was that Trae Young? I think it might have been. It was I believe it was a Hawks thing. Anyway, you got me going down memory lane. I remember with Grayson Allen's on court, shenanigans, reputation in college that made a lot of waves. I remember back 2019.
It did. Everybody started to replay the Duke experiences with
the tripping
with
and the whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't come in with this good guy, a persona, and he kind of showed it off a few times in Utah. He's turned out to be an incredible player. And, again, it's about development. And that's the thing you always fear, guys, in my book, is you get a guy, you develop him, and then you say, or you try to develop, and maybe at 21, after that rookie contract, you decide not to go option on him, and you partner him in another trade of sort, then you go, wow, maybe we should have stayed with him a little bit longer. That's really the trick in my book of where we are, and the fan base, I think, totally understands it in Utah, is, okay, we got young guys, what do we see, but how much time do you give them to actually earn their next contract and allow them to become a part of the future? I like Flip. that may turn out to be a great steal in the second pick of the second round last year. And Isaiah Collier. I mean, he was the most recruited high school player in the nation at one time, but got alongside Bronny James, who stole a lot of the thunder at USC. And he's now become more, I think he's developed more leadership in the last 25 games. And maybe for the first time, he feels like I got a chance to be who I need to be. And, and Thurl always talks about the switch. There's always a moment in time where a player goes, I belong. And it may take other players longer. I don't think Cody Williams, that switch hasn't been flipped yet. And he needs to find some confidence in Summer League. I mean, his brother's an NBA champion. That's a lot of pressure, and the DNA, there's some similarities, but also you've got to be a battler. And I'm pulling for Cody, but again, there's pressure there being a top 10 pick. And, sooner or later you have to say, I'm in or I'm out. And I think the Jazz are going to give him every opportunity. But those are, this Summer League and in Salt Lake and Vegas are big for him, just to see if he's made a jump and how much he's worked in the offseason. Same to go with Flip and also Collier, all three of those guys. How much better are you? How much have you put in gym time? And I think the biggest part, too, is the mental side. What made MJ great? What makes LeBron great? Kareem and the names that are all in the Hall of Fame, because the mental side, Stockton and Malone, mentally, they had the physicality or at least the abilities, but they were just mentally tough. And that's what you have to build to.
I don't know how this interview became Summer League centric, but do you have a favorite Summer League memory? You've had an incredible career. I just want to get it out there, and I don't know if the younger generations know just how much you've done. Like, I remember watching the Volkswagen knockoff commercials that you guys did back at a different station during the playoffs. But do you have a favorite Summer League memory?
Oh my gosh, I think Trey Young came up to mind just because he was so hyped coming in, and I thought, wow, this could be a bust. And there's still some people, outliers, who don't think that sometimes leadership is going to be the biggest issue for most point guards. Is it me or is it all of us? But I thought I really was expecting more. That kind of came into it. I tell you, the Summer League that really jumps back at me is in the East High School gym when Karl Malone and Tom Chambers got tangled up. Now, this is taking me way back in my early years at KSL. I think I was 26 or 27.
Was that pre-Rocky Mountain Review, or was that Rocky Mountain Review? Okay. Wow.
I think it was pre, and they were having – at that time, they were scrimmaging with the Jazz and alums from Utah. I think Pace Manning was part of that team as well, who played for the Jazz for a short period of time, was on our broadcast team. Great guy. But Malone and him got into it. That's one of those big fans who are listening. You're going to chuckle, man, but that just tells you how long this has been going on. But they had those big fans that would be turned on to keep the gym cool.
Okay.
But those two got tangled, and we were all like, what is going to go down here, man? A couple of heavyweights, squaring off. But Tom had an attitude, and he wanted to prove to the young guy, he still had some, he still had something. And Karl Malone was just becoming, a force in this league, and those two guys squared off. I remember that very well, standing there going, where's this going, man? We need a ring announcer. But, there's always something special that comes through. Gobert played in Summer League, and, those are memories. I mean, when you start to see a young, big, tall guy from France, you go, really? Is this guy, does he got enough? And he sure did. I mean, look at his defensive prowess. I mean, Rudy made his own name, and I think that's what's neat is to go back and think about, okay, what did I see when he was 18, 19, or 20, and now 5 or 6 years later, what has he become? And I love the list of players who participated in Summer League and who have gone on to be an impact player in the NBA. There's a lot of players who come through Salt Lake. And Jazz fans who go to those games understand what I mean. We've seen some really good talent who you could almost eyeball and go, wow, yeah, he's going to be good. And this summer, in 2 weeks, we're going to do it again. And that's what's fun, is to see how these young guys respond, because it's their first pressure. college is one thing, NBA is another. You made it. And that's what I love is, okay, what do you got? Show me your mental toughness. Show me what you got on handles and your ball skills and what kind of shooter are you. But also, can you play some D? Can you get in the guy's grill? Because that's really going to maybe separate whether or not you make an NBA roster or they're going to continue to try to develop you in the G League. So there's pressure there, and you're going to see a lot of guys who either sink or swim. And some guys, they write you to a summer league contract, and then all of a sudden, bye-bye. You never see them again. And it's an interesting concept, because all of us kind of dreamt about it. I mean, I thought about playing. I'd love to play NFL. It never happened. I mean, most of those dreams are there as kids. But, man, there's some people some men, women, that have dreams of WNBA and running track and, professional lacrosse. I mean, whatever it may be. But gosh, there's a lot of people that just never make it. They may get a shot, but what happens when you get the opportunity? Are you a half inch too short, a quarter step too slow? Sadly, you may be 6'8", but you don't have, the reach that they need. And so you also got to get lucky. Look at Kelly Olynyk. I mean, he bounces around this league. He's 34. I love him to death. He was a great piece of the Jazz, but one of my favorite guys, the KO, the clinic. And he can just play hoop. But, it's not fancy. It's not sexy, but he gets the job done. And you need those type of players, right? Not everyone's going to be an all-star. Not everyone's going to, be having their jersey worn 24/7. But you still have to have that type of player to meld with the other 14 that can actually go out and be part of a team and help you win. And those are the guys I'm always looking for. You can spot the stars, but how about the reserves? How about the second unit that can come in and make an impact? And I think that's where that's why I think Oklahoma City in the end won, because of bench strength and defense. They didn't shoot the three well. They had some turnover problems. But Boston won it a year before because of just absolutely outstanding defense, and they were healthy and deep as well. But you got to have those 3-4 guys from 6, 7, 8, and 9 that are really going to be elite and be happy with their role. And that's the key. Can you keep everybody happy? Boy, that's tough to do.
It absolutely is, and we can't wait to see what tonight's and tomorrow's Utah Jazz draft picks do in Summer League coming up a couple weeks from now, and we'll see who those
who you
guys
guys
are.
Picking? I know you got to go. You got to go. Who you picking?
So Bryan and I talked about this in the first segment. I'm partial to Trey Johnson if he's there at 5. And Bryan, who's your guy?
I kind of like Colin Knippel, and I also like Malawach, but I think Trey Johnson is the pick.
Yeah. I think Knippel, I'm glad you brought him up. He could be the one that pushes the domino.
Yeah.
It's hard to find a second fiddle that's as good and talented and just overall. He's like a 5-tool player. He's just not a superstar.
He is. Yeah. Yeah, I think Knippel may be a guy that pushes this top 5, and that it's really intriguing to me. I think that's a name you got to watch for. I mean, he played alongside the Flag, well coached at Duke, got all the assets that you want in a player. And you're right. He's like a toolbox. I need a wrench. Okay, I'm coming. I need a flathead screwdriver. Okay, I got that too. How about bringing a hammer? I mean, the kid can play, and he can play multiple positions. And I think he's dedicated to playing some D as well. So I think he's the one guy that could kind of mix up the top 5. I really could.
Yeah, certainly someone to watch. Bowler, thank you so much for the time. Enjoy the draft. I know you're doing your own coverage. Oh yeah, tell us about the coverage you'll be doing. The Jazz Plus has got a broadcast tonight, right?
Yeah. Big T and I, Boone, Locke, and Alema. They're going to be. We're going to be right outside the door of the War Room, and we're going to be filtering in some guests. I hope throughout the night, including Austin. I'd love to see Boozer, who's now helping out the Jazz. I think it's great to have Carlos back with the Utah Jazz, and he's got 2 twins that are going to Duke that are going to be outstanding players in the next year. But we're on SEG Plus, and I do believe there's an offer tonight. I'm not trying to be a pitch man here, but I think if you just tune in and you like it, you can obviously watch Jazz games later next year, and you can do it you can pay at a later time. But yeah, check it out. we're excited to bring some action to fans, a different perspective. I understand, it's on the big network, but we'll have some fun. And Darrell Griffith is going to join us as well tonight, the number 2 pick and the Rookie of the Year back in 1980. That's going back a while, but I love Griff. He loves the Jazz, and he's going to be a part of our broadcast tonight. We'll interview him later.
Great stuff. That's starting 6 o'clock, or
6
is it a little
o'clock.
earlier? Okay,
6
o'clock. Awesome,
yeah, 6
Bowler.
o'clock.
Hey, enjoy that.
Thanks, guys.
We'll be tuning in for sure. Have a good one.
Appreciate you. Take care.
Craig Bowlerjack, one of a kind, man. That was outstanding. I love that we started draft and it ended up being mostly summer league, and just walking down memory lane. I would have loved to have been able to see Tom Chambers and Karl Malone mix it up in the East High School gym where Troy Bolton would eventually and Parker Van Dyke would eventually walk. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, we've had some real themes going on for this adventure of us filling in for OC.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The East Side Gym with giant fans, that took me back to my days of high school.
Yeah.
I can't imagine Karl Malone and Tom Chambers
playing on the East High School floor. Yeah.
Tom Chambers was so good. He was a filthy basketball player.
He was so good at Utah and even better in the NBA. Real quick, speaking of, I can't imagine seeing those guys playing in a high school gym in Utah. The Powder League had a Pro-Am charity scrimmage, and it was Brandon Taylor, former running Ute, that put it on along with, was it Lawrence Bora, I believe. Those two put it on. They were raising money for foster care, I believe, in Utah. It was at Highland High School. My brother and I went, and you had Utes like Coos and DeLon Wright who were and still are in the league and were at the time. But you also had KCP and Scotty Barnes, the reigning Rookie of the Year at the time, playing at Highland High School. It was incredible, and Andy Larson was there. I saw him standing on the floor, so I walked over to him at the baseline, and he's like, "This is," and we both were like, "This is insane." That at the time they were saying Scotty Barnes might be the guy who signs the first $200 million contract, and he may not be that guy now, but he's still a really good player. And he's like, that guy, people are saying he's going to make $200 million at some point. He's playing at Highland High School. Like, it's a modern version of what you were just talking about. I can't imagine Tom Chambers and Karl Malone playing at East High School in a summer league.
It didn't make sense at the time. It wouldn't make sense even more now because it's just like the risk involved and everything like that. I remember them promoting that. I also flashed back to the Rocky Mountain Review days, which you brought up.
Yeah.
At the old Salt Lake Community College gym. And that place was so wide open, you could basically go sit on the bench next to guys.
Yeah.
Like during the game. Like there was zero security rules, really. Like if you were a kid, it was like parents just dropped you off for the day and then picked you up afterwards, and you just picked up autographs from everybody. It was crazy.
Yeah, Vegas Summer League used to be a lot more like that too. It's not anything close to that. It's blown up so much. It's
probably for the best that things have become a little more secure and separated, but at the same time, like it was really fun. Cool. Yeah. And then that's the part I think that's been lost a little bit in all this is these guys are superstars from such a young age. And Buller talked about that a lot. There's so much pressure and expectation put on those guys, and especially I think the Trae Young situation in Utah too. He was coming in as one of those guys where it's like, hey, this is the next Steph Curry, and then he just sort of bombed the first couple games. I think he finished with one good game, and there's all the chatter about like, oh, you have a summer league performance like this, and you end up being a bad basketball player.
All NBA player a couple times now. It's worked out.
He's done okay.
It's definitely worked out for Trae Young. So gonna do a bit of programming shifting a little bit. We went way too long with Craig Bowlerjack and just now, which is just fine. So we're not gonna play the Bill Armstrong media availability next. Let's continue this draft conversation, Brian. If you're okay with that, we'll move to the Bill Armstrong media availability tape to around 1:30. So push that back an hour. Continue the draft talk. and probably get to what I wanted to talk about in the hot lunch as well. There was a taunting situation in which the result of which is a Chicago White Sox fan has been banned indefinitely. Is there a line with taunting? What is it? We'll get into that and more draft conversation next in about 3 minutes. First, though, Live Night Events presents the 2025 Granary Live Concert Series powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer, also a proud sponsor of our ESPN 700 studios here at Broadway Media. Experience outdoor concerts in the heart of downtown Salt Lake's Granary District. Find more details at ESPN700sports.com. More ahead on this Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC the rest of the week on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Start your engines. ESPN 792.1 FM is excited to announce the first ever Monster Jam World Finals. And as promised on Friday, I will have a favorite Monster Jam guy, Bryan Brown, Monster Jam driver, Monster Truck. I do not have that ready today, though. But the Monster Jam World Finals coming to Rice-Eccles Stadium, first time in Utah, July 4th and 5th. We'll have a pair of tickets and topical trivia around 1:45 here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Tickets also available at Ticketmaster if you're not one of the lucky winners. We'll have tickets all the rest of this week. So if you don't win today, there'll be more to give away tomorrow. And you might want to just go to Ticketmaster and buy a couple just in case, though. So that's the Monster Jam World Finals. And, yes, on Friday I will have a favorite to unveil. I know Bryan already has a few favorites because you're a big Monster Jam guy, I have learned.
Yeah, I mean, just look at me. Why wouldn't I be a big Monster Jam guy?
I don't know if you heard about this situation yet. I put it in my update. There was a taunting situation at the Arizona Diamondbacks Chicago White Sox game on the south side of Chicago. It was a Diamondbacks win. That's not the story, though. The story is a fan was ejected last night and then today has since been banned indefinitely by the White Sox for taunting Diamondbacks player Ketel Marte. You go, well, what was this taunt, right? The taunt was about Marte's late mother. Yes, late mother. His mom had unfortunately died a number of years ago, I believe in a car accident, and this fan decided it was okay to make some kind of make his taunting about that in some way. We don't know what he said. Maybe doesn't matter, but my curiosity is piqued. Like, what could he have said about his mom that was deemed this bad? The impact, whether it was like a kind of innocent yo mama joke type thing, not necessarily that personal, just trying to get in the guy's head, and the guy didn't know about that his mom had died. I'm not sure I believe that angle, but whether it was that or it was he absolutely knew and he was trying to use that against Marte. The impact it had on Marte, he called for time, bent over to compose himself. At one point, I don't think on the field, but sometime in post game, he was in tears about it. Mm-hmm. Like, that's why Torey Lovello, Arizona Diamondbacks manager, rightfully points it out and says, "Hey, let's do something about this." Fan gets ejected, and now has been banned immediately. So whether the nature of it was more innocent or not in the taunting, the impact that it had, that's why the guy gets banned. That's why it crosses the line, Bryan Brown.
I'm one of those people that likes people to feel involved, and I don't want to be. We always say like fans are, short for fanatics, and all these phrases that we talk about that kind of allows fans this license to just say and do whatever they want. And I kind of disagree with that. There needs to be a code, whether to this end, whether or not the fan knew that there was a situation with
very sensitive situation with his mother passing away however many years ago. Yeah.
I appreciate that somebody else stepped up and said, hey, this can't happen. Right. Like that's the part to me that really stands out in this picture is that it was someone else, because I think as an athlete, as a ball player, the last thing you want to do in that instance is show weakness. But grief hits when it hits. And when somebody says something that strikes a chord with you or triggers an emotion, sometimes that's why I love the team aspects, is because you have people around you to help take care of you in those instances,
Absolutely. And listen, I unfortunately have a lot of experience with what Ketel Marte is going through. I lost my mother when I was a teenager, was not to a car accident, but still lost my mother way too early in life. My father passed away a couple years ago as well, so I'm technically an orphan the rest of my life here. So, and listen, it was in middle school, junior high age when my mom passed away, and kids are immature. Yeah. My friend group they'd do the yo mama jokes and stuff. That never bothered me because I knew that they weren't talking about my mom, right? And I also was like, it's important that I'm able to, that my friends are able to be themselves with me, even though they know what's going on. So that never bothered me. It was funny to see sometimes the reaction be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." I'd be like, "It's fine. You were making a joke. I even laughed at it. It was really funny." But what seems to me is whatever was said was something that it seemed it would have to be this fan knew the situation with Marte's mother and said something just very personal that made him go, "Wow, really? You're going to do that? You're going to use that as taunting? You're going to verbally abuse me?" And to the point of where that's verbal abuse of me at the plate. That's not just good taunting. And listen, I'm on record here on the Sean O'Connell show telling some stories when I was in high school. I love taunting. I think fan taunting is an important part of the fan experience, but you got to keep it silly. You got to keep it the worst thing about it is that it's obnoxious, not that it's actually going to cause some real pain towards that player. We had the situation with the unfortunate situation with Russell Westbrook at the Jazz game, where that Westbrook felt that was racially motivated, and that fan was banned for life. Right? It's those kind of lines you just cannot cross. You got to keep it fun. You can be personal, but it's got to be fun. And like I said, to the point, the worst thing about it is that you're obnoxious. That's it.
You never know when someone else's breaking point hits or what might trigger something, right? So I always live like you can't set like strict definitions. Talk about this, don't talk about that.
Right.
But I think you can always live by the rule, don't make yourself the main character. When you're a fan at a baseball game or a sporting event, don't make yourself the main character. It's not about you. It's we have the same beef whenever an umpire or an official gets a little too full of themselves and starts making a show. Yeah, the Joey Crawford dance every time we would call a foul or a charge comes to mind. But that's the easiest way to abide by it. Just don't make it about yourself. If you're there, you want to taunt, be clever with it. You see those social media chants all the time, or the videos with like those guys who sit in the Giants outfield and have the clever phrases, things like that. I used to do that at the Bees game all the time. There's some.
See, mine, to your point on the clever thing, it wasn't that clever, but I tried to be clever with it. So I had a lot of friends on the girls basketball team, so I went to a lot of girls basketball games, and there was less people at the girls basketball games, so I probably stood out a whole lot more as the taunting guy. But whatever there was an Arby's by our school, and so we'd always get, it was 5 for $5.95 at that time. 5 for $5 probably originally the good Arby's deal, right? So the number 5 on the other team, they'd be at the free throw line. I'd just say, "Arby's, 5 for $5.95. Arby's, let's get like just so
real great
stupid.
Work by you, by the way.
So stupid, right? But like that's the kind of taunting that that's the kind of taunting that fans should do, that maybe even be encouraged to do that kind of stuff. Like if you're doing that much more than that, you are taking it way too far.
Yeah.
And again, without putting any strict rules on, hey, don't talk about this, only talk about this. Like just don't make yourself the story. I love that.
There's no need to be vitriolic. You can say some things that may be a little bit cutting, or maybe have a little edge to them. That's fine. I get it. I prefer not to do that, just because I'm the kind of person where I don't know where other people are coming from. I don't know what they've been through. I don't know
what
their
reaction's going to be. Yeah.
So we used to do dumb stuff. You mentioned girls basketball. We would go to the softball games when I was playing football, and so like they'd have a decent crowd, and then you'd have 15 football players show up, and we'd sit there every single time the opposing team would start to warm up, or somebody would go throw like little soft toss. We go boop, boo.
See,
and it would be
good.
so loud, and it was so funny because like by the third game of the series, some of the parents from the other team come over and were like, "Hey, this is so cool that you guys do this." It's like it's distracting, but it's also funny, and it was never mean spirited. Like we were smart enough to know like we're all wearing football gear. It's obvious who we are. But to have the opposing side parents come up and be like, that's really cool that you guys are supportive and it's funny and it's like not mean or vindictive. Like it just made for a better atmosphere. And lo and behold, that team that year that we started doing that team made a massive run through the playoffs in D2. So
all
this was
because
down
of you guys.
Yeah, it was. I mean, had nothing to do with the fact that they had like 4 All-Americans. So shout out to I believe that was the 2009 now Utah Tech Trailblazers softball team.
Okay, yeah. There's great stuff there. We love the Trailblazers here. I am a Trailblazer myself.
You and I both. We share that experience.
On the other side, we'll do another short segment here. About 3 minutes from now, I made a joke about Ryder Lyons and his mission experience, with his plan for his mission. There's a lot of inquiring minds wondering how in the world is a guy allowed, maybe allowed's not the right word, to serve a full-time mission, but only plan on doing it for 1 year. Anyone in Mormon culture, those are our listeners they're still active members, whatever, growing up in Utah, mission for boys, you're gone 2 years. Ryder Lyons says he's only going to serve one mission. I happen to know a bishop, a 1 year mission, excuse me. I happen to know a bishop pretty well. So asked him, was there some kind of change I'm not aware of here? So I'll tell you what I found out on the other side about 3 minutes from now. Ryder Lyons and his mission plans. Here on the Sean O'Connell Show, James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Okay, it's not hour 3 yet, people, okay? I know it's 1:01, but the 1 o'clock hour, Radio Magic here, 1 o'clock hour is going to start a few minutes later because we got to finish up the noon hour here. I made a prison joke in the first segment because I don't even remember when you brought up prison camp, Bryan. But you said something about prison camp in the first segment, and I said, hey, I've got some information about Ryder Lyon's mission situation. Anyone who might be upset about that, we both served missions. We know it's not prison. All right, it's just a joke. It may be in poor taste. I'll admit to that. Ryder Lyons, though, has caused quite a bit of stir, Bryan, on social media because he has said that he plans to serve a full-time mission of 1 year before he joins BYU. Now, anyone who grew up in the church, anyone who's from Utah, as I said leading into this segment, knows that typically boys, when they say they're serving a full-time mission, it's 2 years. Best 2 years is the name of the movie, right? It's not the best year. So people like Josh Newman, who spent some time here with the Salt Lake Tribune, and others have said, wait a second, 1 year mission? That goes against what I've heard of before. And for anybody who's coming at people who are asking those questions just out of total curiosity with some, why is this an issue kind of attitude, like, okay, calm down, step away from the keyboard, count to 10, and then maybe don't tweet. But if you do, like, just be a little calmer about it. Someone's asking a question, was there a change that we're not aware of? Okay, because this is abnormal. Can we at all admit to that this is an abnormal thing? So my brother happens to be a bishop, Bryan Brown. So I text him. He has access to the church handbook, right, as a bishop. Shout out to Mike Peterson, by the way, and out on the west side, best side. I'm like, I don't know if you saw this. Sports people are curious. Laughing, crying emoji, right? He says, I am not aware of any change that any kind of accommodations for, or any kind of change to, hey, you can choose between a 1 year or 2 year mission, 14 months, 18 months, whatever, for a boy, and for girls, 18 months or shorter, right? So then I see another comment where they said there's been recent changes where you can make accommodations for that. So I tell him, hey, someone said this specifically. Do you know anything more about it? He said, I am not aware of any change to length of missions. So what I infer from that, Bryan, is this would be either a service mission where you can choose however long you want to do it, but you're not a full-time missionary except for the hours of the day that you say that you're a missionary, right? Or this is a full-time mission, and 1 year in, his call's going to say we anticipate you serving for 2 years, or whatever the exact language is, that we expect you to serve for 2 years. And he says to his mission president 1 year in, hey, I'm ready to go home. Or maybe it's a third option that you brought up off air, Bryan, that in certain situations the mission call says we anticipate you serving 1 year. So it's one of those three things. It sounds like it's not a service mission, so it sounds like it's one of the other two. You told me that there's some precedence within the Lions family.
So Brother Walker did the exact same thing and served a year in Norway before he came back to play at USC.
Okay. So it sounds like accommodations have been made in some way.
I have no idea if they have like an inside lane to getting this done. I think I've heard of something like this happen similarly with other athletes or whatnot, but it also bears, just for the sake of factual relevance, these are volunteer missions. So, like, it's not, like you said, it's not a prison sentence.
You really can leave whenever you want.
Yeah.
You can serve for a week and say, okay, I'm out.
In fact, I know an acquaintance that decided that he was just done and went and lived on the beach when he was on his mission for a week before family came down to gather him up and take him home. So sometimes you do that. There are a lot of those kinds of stories out there. But again, interesting way to announce it, though. I think on a national program,
Yes.
and I think it's unique because you get the perspective of like, wow, what a great advertisement for the LDS Church and Ryder Lyons making the sacrifice, and then on the flip side, all of us who are embedded in the culture, like, wait a second, 1 year? I thought those were for 2 years.
Yeah. So anyway, it does make sense that some accommodations can be made because they are voluntary, and also going back to the angry BYU fan or active Mormon who's saying, "Why is this an issue at all?" No one's saying it is. First off, and also, no one thinks that he's less of a person because he's volunteering one less year of service to his church and spreading goodwill in his own way. Okay, no one thinks that. There might be jokes of people saying that, but come on. Can we not take things so seriously? Like, this is however much time he's devoting to service of his God and his church and spreading goodwill, of course, is a great thing for a young man to do. All right? So hats off to him for wanting to serve any amount of time at all. It just happens to be a year shorter than the norm. That's the official stance of James Peterson and the Sean O'Connell show today. All right? And by the way, he probably is going to be a really good player for BYU.
James Peterson finds out.
James Peterson finds out. Watch out, Pablo Torre. Bell Fraser on the other side. We're going to talk NHL draft, which starts on Friday with Bell. And then we'll also hear from Bill Armstrong, his media availability yesterday, as long as we don't talk out the entire rest of our clock, Bryan. That's our goal. Bell Fraser from the Salt Lake Tribune next. On the Sean O'Connell Show, James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC. Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 792.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Okay, now we're in hour 3 of the Sean O'Connell show. That 5 minutes we did at the start from 1 o'clock to about it was more like 8 minutes. Was not in the 1 o'clock hour. Now we are in the 1 o'clock hour. Radio Magic. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC today once again. We'll be back tomorrow and Friday as well. And we're so excited to talk some NHL draft and Utah Mammoth offseason with Utah Mammoth beat writer for the Salt Lake Tribune, Mammoth Insider, Belle Fraser. Belle, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. So wanted to start with this. This is the question that everyone has, and you, in fact, had it for Bill Armstrong yesterday in his media availability. What were you able to find out about this question? How open are the Mammoths to trading that number 4 pick? How willing are they to just stay pat?
Well, General Manager Bill Armstrong has had a pretty consistent answer to that question ever since they won the 4th overall pick. We talked to him right after the lottery, and even then he said, we feel very lucky that we jumped up. It feels like a bonus, but there's a lot more you can do with a 4th overall pick than just draft a player. Like you said, you could package it for a player who's already in the NHL through a trade, or you can move up or down in the draft if you're eyeing a specific prospect. So he stuck true to his answer. He said, listen, that's my job as a GM. You're talking to other teams, other front offices. You're seeing every option and every avenue you could go down with this. So he said that, yes, they're not closed off to kind of seeing what's on the field during draft day. That's usually when these trades happen for new NHL fans. If you're going to trade your pick, it usually happens on a draft day, which starts Friday. So I think it's not off the table for the Mammoth, but at the same time, it would be hard to imagine them not taking advantage of this luck because especially of how many centers there are in the top 5, top 10. They have the opportunity to draft what could be a franchise player. So it's almost a win-win or pick your poison sort of situation. But I don't think they're letting go of that pick unless it's for a really big return, which doesn't seem to be on the market right now. But you never know. Draft day finds a way to shock everyone every year, so we'll see. But long story short, it seems like they're still open to it, but it would take a lot for them to actually lose that pick, I think.
Belle, I'm a first-time interviewer, but a longtime fan of your work. I do wonder, as the Mammoth approach this offseason, where do you think the biggest impact comes in for this team? Is it going to come through this draft, or is it going to become moves that they make in free agency?
I think both, and it's really interesting because, yes, last year Utah Hockey Club technically was at the draft, and that was their first pick, but this is their first offseason truly in Salt Lake City, and I think that's been a big question. When you look at the Utah Jazz as well, they've had to get their big players through the draft and through trades. And is that going to be the same with Mammoth, or will the offseason look different for the NHL? Because a lot of the players have loved it here, and Ryan Smith is a unique owner in the NHL compared to the NBA. So you would think that hopefully they could sign a free agent if they needed it. Bill Armstrong talked about it yesterday where he said money's not an issue, but we have to be smart. We're not going to bring in a 31 or 35-year-old for $40 million on a long-term contract because that's not where our team is right now. We're still young. We're still building towards the playoffs. So in that vein, I think people should expect them to build more through the draft and more through trades. And that's the Bill Armstrong style. He helped build the 2019 St. Louis Blues team that won the Stanley Cup. And that whole core was really built through trades and drafting. And then they added 1 to 2 free agents along the way to win the Cup. You also see the Florida Panthers, how they've built their team. Matthew Tkachuk was through a trade, and it wasn't a normal trade. It was one of the biggest trades in NHL history, some could say. But that team was built through transactions and not free agency. So although it is exciting that Utah has more than $20 million in cap space, they have this new owner, they have a new franchise, a lot of things to be excited for this team. I could see them using free agency as kind of depth additions, and then they could use the draft and trades to get more of those cornerstone players. But the market is tough right now because I think we're seeing this offseason in the NHL, there are so many more buyers than sellers right now. Even bad teams are buying. So there's not that balance that we usually see where there's a lot of teams that you could buy pieces from. So that could be a challenge. But yeah, I think the draft and the trade market will be important for the Mammoth in the coming months and weeks.
So Bill reiterated during his availability yesterday, Bill Armstrong, Utah Mammoth GM, that his philosophy is for this draft and for most drafts is take the best player available. He's going to use if they use this draft pick, they don't trade it away. With the fourth pick in particular, it's best player available. Fit doesn't necessarily matter if they feel that guy is absolutely the best player on their board. Do you believe that that's the right approach for where the Mammoth are at this point in their rebuild? And or should they be looking more like best fit with this number 4 pick in particular and later on in the draft?
Yes and no. Bill made a good point about getting the best player available yesterday. He said some teams will go up and just draft the same player 2 years in a row when they're in the top 10 because you forget that these picks and prospects, when they turn into NHLers, can be traded. And he used the example, which is kind of outlandish, not realistic, but he was like, if you have Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby on your team, you're likely going to be able to trade one of them for a big haul. So I think in that way, when you look at best player available, it's just getting the highest value asset on your roster and in your system, whether it pans out to be in your lineup or you can use it as a trade piece down the line. But I do think the Mammoth, and we've talked about this, are in a unique position because they are coming out of a rebuild, because they have playoff expectations the next few seasons. Usually if you're in the top 5 of a draft, you are a completely rebuilding team. You had to suffer through the season to get that high in the draft, and that's not the case for the Mammoth. So I could see them wanting to go with a player who's a bit more developed, who they could have in a lineup in 1 to 2 years. And I think it's obvious that they will not probably go for a center. If not, Porter Martone isn't a center. He's a right wing, which could be an option. But for them, after Matthew Schaefer and Michael Misa, who are projected to go 1 and 2, it's kind of a toss-up. It's the group with James Higgins, Caleb Donoye, Anton Frundell, Jake O'Brien, Brady Martin, and they're all centers with different offensive ceilings, with different size. So I think it's the best player, but I think there has to be a little bit seeping through of which one would fit the best in our team right now, not just skill, but character and style of play and how they would complement the top 6 that they have right now. So I'm here and there on best player available. I believe them when they say it, but I don't believe that you're not putting it into a bigger puzzle piece when you're evaluating these prospects.
Shifting the conversation a little bit away from the Mammoth to local hockey, you wrote an article about a potential sale for the ECHL Utah Grizzlies. It's a hockey team that I've watched my entire time living here in Salt Lake City. NHL is obviously new to everybody around here, but this feels like it was something that in some way, shape, or form was on the horizon because the Grizzlies don't have a connection to the hockey club now. And because of that, it's very similar with G League teams where, the parent club wants the affiliate nearby so that the players get ice time together and all that. Tell us a little bit about what you learned about this situation and if there is maybe something brewing behind the scenes where we could see an affiliate relocate closer to Salt Lake City.
Yeah, it's tough for the Grizzlies, right? Because they're the ECHL affiliate for the Colorado Avalanche, which obviously aren't in Utah. But when the NHL came to Utah, a lot of the Grizzlies fans were like, hockey has been here forever, and now it's kind of just getting its shine that the NHL is here. So you definitely feel for those fans. But based on what the Grizzlies have said, it sounds like it's just a transitional period in ownership with Elmore Sports Group. Sadly, David Elmore died a few years ago, and his wife, Donna, they said is facing declining health, so they can't remain actively involved in team operations as much as they would. So they're looking for a potential sale, and that could mean a relocation because, you can sell out of state. And I think when people heard that, there was a lot of buzz of, can Ryan Smith swoop in with SEG and buy this team? But, they would still be probably the affiliate of the Colorado Avalanche. And the thing is, you can't just move an ECHL team to an AHL team. And that's what most people would want. They would want the Utah Mammoth AHL team to be under the same roof, to be in Utah, because for people that don't know, it goes NHL, AHL, ECHL. So all of the Mammoth prospects that haven't hit the NHL yet, haven't been in the lineup, are usually in the AHL. Those are the guys you want to see. Maverick Lamoureux spent most time there. Josh Doan, Dylan Gunther, they all came up through there. So I think if it was a perfect world, you would want to buy the Grizzlies and turn them into an AHL team and move the Tucson Roadrunners over here. But that's just not how it works, because Alex Morello, too, who was the former owner of the Arizona Coyotes, still owns the Tucson Roadrunners. And that relationship will remain for at least the 2025-26 season. Morello has said he might move the Roadrunners to Reno, Nevada after this year. They're in the 9th year of their 10-year contract at the Tucson Arena, so that's kind of up in the air too. But I think when you look at bringing the AHL team to Utah, it's less of a connection with the Grizzlies and more of conversations with Alex Morello down the line. Yeah, like I said, it would be nice if you could just transfer one to the other and put it all under the same roof, but the bylaws don't really allow that. And who knows? I mean, Ryan Smith has done crazier things, like buy an entire NHL team for over $1 billion. So I'm not going to write him off, but there's not as close of a connection as I think people would like.
Have you heard from fans, longtime fans of the Grizzlies that are probably now avid Utah Mammoth fans after this inaugural season in response to this news of the potential sale? It's got to be heartbreaking for some that this team that's been here for so long is potentially relocating.
For sure, and for a lot of fans who are into hockey and have been playing hockey in Utah, they first saw the game through the Grizzlies since they did not have an NHL team. So totally not even bittersweet, just kind of bitter losing the team that you learned the sport through. Of course, it's nice that the NHL is here, so you get that supplement of the sport. But yeah, it seems like people are very upset about it, and kind of ironic because Arizona Coyotes fans went through this a year ago to move the team to Utah, and now Utah's kind of experiencing the same thing. It's the subplots of the sports world can be funny sometimes, but yeah, I think it'll be a big loss for that fan base, but it's also good on the flip side that they can probably channel that into the Mammoth.
Did you have any chance to go catch a Grizzlies game at the Maverick Center, or any hockey games at the Maverick Center since you've been here?
Yeah, not a Grizzlies game, but Utah Mammoth had a preseason game last year. So I was there for that at the Maverick Center. I know I wanted to get out to a Grizzlies game, but everyone knows the NHL schedule. It's kind of hard to find a night off, but I'll probably go this year knowing that it's their last season potentially. But yeah, the Maverick Center was awesome. Like, that's a legitimate hockey arena. Obviously, Delta Center's under renovation right now, but it was really cool to see a game there. It was loud and, set up for hockey specifically. So that'll be a tough one to lose, or not, or maybe a hometown hero will swoop in. We don't know.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to ask that about going and seeing a game at the Maverick Center is that big hockey history, not just the Grizzlies. The Olympic hockey was played there. There's kind of an apocryphal story now about the Canadian national team signing a wall in the equipment room at the Maverick Center after the 2002 Olympics when they secured gold there. So yeah, I hope that we can continue to have hockey at the Maverick Center because it's got a pretty rich history. It was the E Center before that, if I'm not mistaken, out there in West Valley. So it'd be a shame to lose hockey completely out of that building.
Yeah, totally.
This will date me, Belle, but one of my clearest memories of what is now the Maverick Center, when it was the E Center, was going to see the Up in Smoke tour with Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre. I was in high school at the time. So hopefully those kinds of memories can be made for future generations. But speaking of memories being made, what would be the most memorable experience that could happen for the Mammoth in the draft this week?
I mean, I think the good thing about where this team is that their fan base is just excited for anything, at least from what we've collected and the responses we've gotten from readership is some people have players they like in the draft, but no one is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so upset if they don't draft X, Y, and Z. I think people are just trusting in Bill Armstrong in the front office and want to see what comes next. So I don't think there's going to be a winning the draft moment for this team. But what will be cool is the player, whoever they pick, is going to wear the Utah Mammoth jersey for the first time. Obviously, the actual roster players haven't been on the ice wearing them yet, so it'll be cool to see that jersey pass to the prospect and the pick and have them put on the Utah Mammoth logo for the first time. And then I think an underlying storyline for the draft as well is Utah has 6 picks. It's not just the 4th overall. They have a pick in the 1st through 6th rounds and no pick in the 7th round. And that's where a lot of, sneaky stars can come from. If you think of Michael Kessler, he was late in the draft, sixth round, I believe. So I know people are excited for the 1st round. That's obviously going to be the headliner. But I would say to kind of pay a little bit of attention to who they grab in the later rounds, because those could be depth pieces along the way. And we'll have coverage of that. So, yeah, I don't think there's a main pop for the draft. It's obviously going to be who they pick and having the Mammoth on the NHL stage for the first time.
And I'll let you go on this, Belle. We're talking with Belle Fraser from the Salt Lake Tribune, Utah Mammoth insider here on the Sean O'Connell Show. The Hockey Hall of Fame announced this year's Hall of Fame class, and one of them you at least know of because you share an alma mater with him, Jack Harper, the legendary coach of your BU Terriers. And I saw you gave him a shout-out on Twitter yesterday. Tell us, kind of novice hockey people here, me and Bryan and others that may not have known anything about Jack Parker, about his legend there at BU.
Yeah, he is exactly that. He's a legend. He coached the team for 40 years, was the winningest coach in college hockey, and he brought up a ton of NHL players and NHL coaches. If you look at the New York Rangers bench right now, Mike Sullivan, Joe Sacco, David Quinn, all of them played for Coach Parker, and Quinn actually coached at BU as well after him. So you ask any alumni, any player about him, he was a hard-nosed coach. He was tough. He was screaming on the bench, super old school, but those guys would die for Jack Parker, and he really is Boston hockey embodied. So I think this has been a long time coming. Everyone knows when you step foot in Boston who Jack Parker is, and something I really appreciate about him is he's always willing to talk to the student journalists. And I know it's a small thing, but for us at the student newspaper, getting to call with Jack Parker and get his perspective on things felt like the coolest thing in the world. So he's meant a lot to that community and super humble guy. So amazing to see him get that honor. And I know everyone back home is super happy for him. And I appreciate you guys for giving me 90 seconds to talk about Jack Parker on the Utah radio.
Hey, absolutely. I saw that yesterday scrolling through your Twitter feed, kind of prepping for the interview, and I went, hey, like, this is really cool to see your college coach, the coach of your college you went through, go in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So congratulations to Coach Parker from all the way here in Salt Lake City. And tell us what you and the Trib has coming up for NHL draft coverage and off-season coverage.
Yeah, we'll have a bunch coming up tomorrow. I'll have an NHL draft guide up, pretty comprehensive, players you should watch for, how it works, where to watch, etc. And then we'll have features on all the picks, comments from the team, and then that goes straight into Dev Camp, where we'll talk to more prospects, and that goes into free agency. So a bunch of breaking news, a bunch of features. We'll have it all on the Tribune website, and then on my Twitter as well, I'll post updates. I think it's Belle Fraser 1. But all news will be there as well. So an exciting couple weeks coming up for the Mammoth for sure.
All right. Thank you, Belle. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. That's Belle Fraser, Salt Lake Tribune. If you're not subscribing to the Tribune and you're a hockey fan, you should, because Belle's fantastic and obviously very knowledgeable. And, shout out to Coach Parker, like the Hockey Hall of Fame. Clearly someone very near and dear to Belle Fraser's heart over at BU. An absolute legend of the game. Hey, start your engines. ESPN 792.1 FM is excited to announce the first ever Monster Jam World Finals coming to Utah July 4th and 5th. We'll be giving away tickets next 15, 20 minutes from now here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Got to update the copy every day, guys. That's PSA there. We got it. That's for me.
That's on me.
Update the
That's
copy.
on me.
I have next week written here. This week, today even, about 20 minutes from now here on the Sean O'Connell Show, tickets are also available at Ticketmaster. I think we still got time to listen to Bill Armstrong and his media availability. We're going to do it on the other side. About 3 minutes from now, Bill Armstrong spoke to the media yesterday, previewed the NHL draft, answered some questions about what the plan is for the number 4 pick. You'll get to hear it next here on the Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC the whole rest of the week on Utah's #1 sports talk and home of the Utes, ESPN 792.1 FM. 20 minutes or so left here of a Wednesday Sean O'Connell show. It's been a blast. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC today and the rest of the week as he's on assignment for the PFL in Chicago. We just spoke with Utah Mammoth insider for the Salt Lake Tribune, Bill Fraser, about the NHL draft. Now you get to hear from the Mammoth GM, Bill Armstrong, from yesterday, a media availability. He answered a lot of questions about the NFL draft, primarily some about the Utah Mammoth offseason. Here it is.
Thank you for joining today's media availability with Mammoth General Manager Bill Armstrong to preview the NHL draft. If you have a question for Bill, please raise your hand and wait to be called on. Let's start with Catherine from UtahMammoth.com.
Hey, Bill, draft only a few days away, and I was wondering, could you touch on the process that starts even before the combine, but maybe this past month? What does your team and the organization focus on from meetings, combine, taking players out to dinner, all the way until draft night?
Yeah, well, I've always said it's a process. Like, you got to follow the process. We've been at it for a few years, and it's really getting the best list from your area scouts and your head scouts, and exploring who you're going to get at the range you're at. When you do that, you get into that range and you do it. You exhaust the process, as I call it, of going through every single player, meeting them at the combine, going through their testing, going through their video, reading all the research that your staff has done on them, and then sometimes taking them to dinner, sometimes going to meet their families, going to their houses, or going to dinner with their families. We love to get to know them as much as we can.
Dana Green with ABC.
Thanks for doing this. Do you almost feel like you're playing with house money just because you moved up from 14 to 4? And you want to make the best possible pick if you do make the pick, but is that kind of the feeling that there is just this level of fortune going into this draft?
I don't really view it that way. I've kind of forgotten that we won the lottery. And so it's really about picking at 4. And it's like someone would say to you, oh, you got all these, picks and second rounders. And I say to people, when we have those picks, pretend it's like the only pick you have. Don't get in the thought process of going, oh, we got so many, we can give it away. No. Picks are hard to come by, and you've got to really focus in on what you have and really get into the range of players that are there and value one pick at a time. So, I'm over the giddiness. I think of winning the 4, and now we're at 4. Let's go to work.
Bill Fraser, Salt Lake Tribune.
Hey, Bill. At this point, how open do you remain or not remain about moving the 4th pick, and have you fielded any offers leading up to the draft?
Well, yes. And listen, at this process, every GM, especially the guys that are in the top 10, are all jockeying around and seeing, can they move up? Can they move down? What's the best option for their club? And we talk on with GMs daily about that, and everybody's got the price. It's very rare that it's done that, you can move from 4 to 2 or 2 to 1. It's very rare that happens. Because everybody values the player that they have at that pick, and it's very rare that it does change hands. But do you have to explore it? Yes, that's part of my job. Every morning I wake up and go to work and see if we can better the pick, or if we can come up with different options to maximize where we are.
Steven Wino, Associated Press.
Hey, Bill, seems like the top 3 picks are sort of consensus 1, 2, 3. Do you feel like you guys are sort of the inflection point of this first round where you could go a lot of different directions at 4?
Steven, who are the top 3? Who do you got?
Misa, Schaefer, and Frondell.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you got it done. It's already in the bank. All right. Okay. It's interesting because there's so many, things that can move, right? So I think when you just say the order, the thing that makes me flare up is I once met a GM, and he got this player at 4, and he said to me, I had no idea we're getting the player at 4. I'm like, I don't care who's on that board. We don't take anything for granted, from 1 all the way to 3, and who we're going to get at 4. We dig deep. We go hard, and we don't want any surprises on draft day. So our process, we don't, we go through everything. So, what was the second part of your question? Because I had a hard time getting over the 3. Okay, I'm by the 3.
No, just do you feel like it is wide open in terms of the amount of quality players available for you at 4, in terms of the choices you have?
Yeah, I think there's a good talent range at that area where we're picking. Now it's just working out the order and finalizing that with the scouts. And, the one thing that we do is we look at the player, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We go through everything. We don't hide anything. We're in those conversations, about the player. We never want to draft a player. Then you show up at camp, you're like, nobody said his skating wasn't that good, or hey, he had trouble putting on weight. We go through it all. So it's really a good thing. I think we have an experienced scouting staff that, I was always in the kind of the thought processes, like you never hide anything. You bring everything to light. So we're in that process exploring what's going to come to us at 4, and I like what's there. It's a great opportunity for the club to move ahead.
Jay Stevens, KSL Sports.
Bill, it must be nice to have the 4th pick and not have to have the kind of season that typically gets you the 4th pick. And I know you're always saying best player available rather than position, but with the 4th overall pick, do you start looking position specific?
No, we take the best overall player. That's, listen, I know a lot of guys, they're like, oh, we got to go to the podium and draft the same guy that we drafted the year before. And I'm like, if that's the best player, you should take him, because you have the ability in the NHL to trade players, right? So, if you got a Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby, I'm sure you can trade one of them, right, for some pretty good players. So that's been the theory and the thought process we've always had, is draft the best player available.
Rogan Houston, Deseret News.
Hey Bill, I'm curious, as a former scout yourself, what your kind of theory is in terms of making the pick yourself, or letting your head scout make the pick, or what's your theory for drafting that first round player?
Well, it's a little bit different because we're away from the where the actual players are in this particular draft. So somebody from our club will make that pick. Not our 2 head scouts. But I've always believed in a regular draft. If you put the miles in, you deserve to make the pick. So that's the way. And I was kind of brought up in that system. So I'm a firm believer that, hey, listen, if you're doing all the time on the road, you deserve to get up there and make that pick. So I've always been a big believer of letting the head scout or the assistant head scout do it.
Back to Bell.
Hey Bill, at the combine, Caleb Desnoyers revealed that he had wrist injuries, playing with it for most of the season, said he was going to get an MRI, not sure about surgery. Have you guys gotten any updates on that, and how does that kind of influence the way you look at him on the board?
Well, it's always important to make sure that you go through thorough evaluation when a player's hurt, to make sure you know what you're getting. It's a due diligent process. I leave that up to the medical staff. But we will, just to kind of put in a wide, lens for you, is we're not taking anybody in the draft that we haven't gone through their medical 150%. And if they've had something, in there that we weren't happy about, we follow it up with another medical, usually in Utah or in their hometown through the MRIs and doctors that we know. But we try to be as thorough as we can, because you certainly don't want any surprises when they show up and they're, hey, I got a shoulder surgery I need. Like, you just don't want that. It's not it's not something that you want. And, we've had surgeries where we've drafted Maverick Lambert, but we knew what was going on, and our doctors were good with it. So I think you have to go through the process, but with Mr. Desnoyers, we'll certainly, I believe we have done our process, and we'll let you know how that one works out.
Dana Green.
Hey, Bill, when you're evaluating pick versus trade, how much does it come into play that you have so many young prospects and guys that, were injured last year, like Teej, didn't get to play a lot? Does that come into play, that you want to give those guys a chance, and maybe you'd be more inclined to make a trade instead and make the pick, obviously, if the value is there? And then I also have a question about free agencies with it right around the corner. How much due diligence have you made? Have you been given the go-ahead to fill some of that salary cap space?
Yeah, well, the first part about it is, like, we're a team that has a lot of options because of, our particular, we've got some prospects in the house, we've got some picks, and we've got some following picks, some extra picks the following year. So there's a lot of options for us, and we're going to explore every option to make sure our team's a better team when we start to play in the fall. I think as far as the free agents in that, we've always kind of firmly believed that if the right free agent's there, we'll sign them. Money's not an issue. We're also at a point with the club, though, that it's not our final piece we're adding. We're still building, and one of the things you have to remember is that you've got Gunther, who plays major minutes for us. He's a young player. Logan Cooley's a young player, and Josh Doan's a young player, and now we're going to put Simashev and Boot. They're going to come in. They're young players too. Most times you don't win in any a championship until your guys are 27, 28, 29. And you look at the McDavids and the Dreisaitl's and the Kachucks and all the guys that are having massive success at the NHL level, the Barkovs, they're not 21 years old. So we have to live in the reality of we've got good players. We've got to add players around, but we don't necessarily need to sell the farm for a 31-year-old, a 35-year-old for $40 million to come in and kind of clog our team up, and then we can't make the signing when we need it. When it's the last piece we need in 5 years to add. So we do have to be smart about it. I've always said this. You see those teams last year that they won the summer, they crushed it. They didn't win the winter. So there's a little patience with our club because we are young, we are maturing right in front of your own eyes. We're going from and we're going into high school next year. How does that sound? We're going from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, and here we go. So you just want to be smart about it, and we do get excited about, hey, we could add this guy and that guy, but not if it's going to hurt us 5 years from now, and you guys are coming and saying, hey, does that $9 million to sign that guy, does that hurt us now? Yeah, it does. It's $9 million we could have added in the final piece, so we go compete for a Stanley Cup. So there's a little patience in the process that you have to have, and sometimes during that patience, you don't win the summer, but you take a step in the fall, and that's what counts.
Steven Wino?
Just following up on that, Bill. Matthew Darsh was saying earlier that as GMs with the cap going up this much, you guys have to be disciplined. How tough is that balance to strike in terms of knowing there's money to spend, knowing there's a bunch of free agents out there, but not also wanting to spend crazy?
Well, we're all super competitive. Our coaching staff is super competitive, and so is our owner. You're not going to be at this level unless you're super competitive. But you have to click into reality, and we can't make Logan Cooley and Dylan Gunther and Josh Doan and the rest of the young players any older than they are right now. So there's a reality of that, and that's what keeps you disciplined. You've got to move forward with the group, and the group will tell you when they're ready. We had it in St. Louis where we completed some trades at the end, the Ryan O'Reillys of the world and the Shens and put some guys in place, and then we went and signed Bozak, because we needed that piece to finish it off. So we just got to be smart, disciplined. It's part of the game. You get excited about dreaming about those free agents to add in, but at the same time, we've always had success and been able to take a step forward by doing the smart thing, the right thing, and improving our team, but not at the cost of the future, stopping this team from winning when we're supposed to.
Final few questions. Cole Bagley, KSL Sports.
Hey, Bill, just curious, when you guys are going through this process, how big does the player's personality go into whether or not you're going to select them and how they could fit into the culture you're trying to build?
That's a great question. When we draft players, we do a lot of work on them. We go back sometimes, talk to their, peewee coaches and their teachers, and get to know them inside and out. If you have a player sometimes that ends up being your captain, it's not accident that happens. You can see in an early age the leadership and the qualities that these particular young men have, even when they're 15, 16, 17. And so you can really learn a lot about them and kind of predict the future by getting in there and really diving deep, and doing personality tests too helps you out a lot. And the psych doctors and their coaches really can kind of guide you. But most times when you're successful and you're drafting someone that overachieves or becomes your captain or leads you to a championship, it has to do with their personality. So you have to do a lot of work in that.
David Graff with Fox.
You mentioned all the young guys that you guys have right now. What gives you so much confidence with you and your group when you're making these selections?
Well, I think the confidence I always say comes from a source. And our source is the fact that we've been able to draft the Coolies and the Doans and the Gunthers, of the world, and they've been great pieces for us, and now you're going to see the Boots and the Simashevs come in. So confidence comes from our scouting staff and the work that they've done in the past, and you can see what a difference that's made into into our organization. And even the fact that last year we had to trade Geeky and Moser, those guys were all drafts from our staff. So you can see it an early time with this organization, the quality scouting that Ryan and Daryl and their staff has provided. If you go to Hockey DB and you look at the Gunther draft, there's 4 or 5 kids that are already playing in the National Hockey League out of that draft, and that's not by accident. That's by the work that they do and how they run their staff. So it's important that we continue that path. We're not getting out of this unless we draft well, and we've got to take those next steps. The hard part is, you see the Tijuginlas and you see the Boots and the Simashevs, and it's just waiting for them to come in. And then once they come in, it's waiting for them to be good enough to have impact on your club. But time goes by, and when you invest in that and you get the right coaching around them and the right development, it goes really quick. And good players will peek their head up early, and they'll show you glimpses of how good they are, and then you can hang your hat on that a little bit later on. So I'm really excited about the staff that we have in place here and what they've done so far, and we got a long way to go.
Last 2 questions. We'll start with Brogan Houston.
I'm just wondering about Connor Ingram, if you have any updates on his status, and if the answer is no, if there's a plan to find a contingency there.
Yeah, I haven't checked today on him, but from the point right now, it's all speculation of where he's at, and I don't really want to comment.
Sure.
He's a great kid. I know he's in the program, and I know that he's we wish him the best, and hopefully he can get on the other side of this, and we'll continue to look for updates.
Last question, Belle Fraser.
Yeah, Bill, in terms of internal decisions that could influence choices around the draft and free agency, how do you see things standing with Jack McBain and his RFA status?
We've had great talks with Jack and his agency, and along with Jack, and he's been very professional on his side, and I think they're very happy with how the talks have gone, and we just make some further progress as we go along. He's got a great agent he works with, Newport Sports and Pat Morris, and they do a great job. So it's not an easy fight, but it's good. I think we're both on the same page. Hopefully, at some point in time during the summer, we move a little closer to getting the deal done.
All right. Thank you, Bill, and thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you.
That's Bill Armstrong. His media availability ahead of Friday and Saturday's NHL draft. You just heard from Belle Fraser giving us a good content there. That's up on the website. This media availability with Bill Armstrong is also up on the website, ESPN700sports.com. If you only caught part of that, you can hear it in its entirety there. Didn't give us a ton of transparency, but you don't expect that from GMs, right?
Weird.
Like a couple days out from the draft, they're gonna play things close to the chest, as they should. So we'll find out Friday what they actually do, and Saturday, because as Bell said, they've got 6 picks, 1 in each round. So every part of the draft should be relevant to Utah Mammoth fans coming up this weekend. Spence Checketts and the driver coming up next. We're going to do crosstalk with him next on the Sean O'Connell Show. James Peterson, Bryan Brown filling in for OC, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Monster Jam World Finals coming to Utah for the first time. Rice-Eccles Stadium, to be specific. July 4th weekend. We have tickets. We have a pair of tickets to give away now to the first person to text in, 877-353-0700. The answer to this question, Brian Brown asked a terrific question to Greg Bolerjack in the noon hour. What was Bowler's favorite summer league memory here in Salt Lake City? His favorite summer league memory. It involved a couple of local legends. That's the only hint you get. The winner will get 2 tickets to the Monster Jam World Finals, July 4th and 5th at Rice-Eccles Stadium. We got Spence Checketts in studio, ready to do some crosstalk. The Drive with Spence Checketts is next here on ESPN 792.1 FM. I keep wanting to say the Sean O'Connell Show. The Drive is obviously not next on the Sean O'Connell Show. Spence.
Well, I mean, it follows. You're not
follows.
James, you wear 7 hats around here, buddy. It's okay if you forget 1 or 2 things.
Everything is the OC show.
Yes.
It's just, yeah.
It's all OC show. Spence, draft tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You, Smitty, Gordy will be in this studio. I'll be behind the glass covering our live draft show. Where are you leaning as to what the Jazz will do with their number 5?
Yeah, this Jaylen Brown story is pretty interesting. I don't know how, if there are legs to it. I'm not reporting anything. I don't exist in that space as much as I used to, trying to report things because it's
a terrible space.
It's a terrible space.
Don't do it.
Our guy Bear understands. So it's a total pain in the ass. And second of all, Shams and Woj really Schefter for the NFL. That market is pretty much cornered. I can remember I had Chris Mannix used to be one of our daily assist guys, and he was working at Yahoo with Woj at the time. I said, what is his world like, dude? Like, when you watch Woj, he said he has 2 cell phones at all times, and even if you're talking to him, his head is down looking at his phone. Now, when I was with the Jazz for 7 years, I had relationships with the president, with the general manager, and the coach that allowed me to break some things actually before even Woj got some. But I don't exist in that space anymore, so I don't know if the Jaylen Brown thing has legs, but Jake Fisher has talked about it. Shams himself has talked about it. So if the Jazz are able to hold on to Markkanen, hold on to Kessler, and hold on to 5 and add Jaylen, then okay, I think we have something. But I just so that essentially it would look like this. It would be John Collins, Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, maybe 21 this year, and maybe 3 future firsts for Jaylen. So what that does is actually allows you to take that step forward that people have talked about. I don't know that Boston wants to do that. I wouldn't do it if I was Boston myself. That just means they're breaking it down to try to tank until Tatum gets healthy. So we'll track that. If they land on 5, the mocks are split. I've seen a mock with Ace Bailey. I've seen a mock with Jeremiah Fears. I've seen a mock with Trey Johnson. It feels like 1, 2, and 3 are set, so the intrigue starts at 4. But they're going to come away with a good player tonight. And it's also the first peek we have into the mind of Austin Ainge as the primary roster constructor. So we'll get, obviously, Gordy and Smitty in their perspective combined. Let's see. Smitty, 40 years. Gordy's got to be 50 years at this point. So we got to combine like 90 years of basketball experience in the studio tonight.
Gordy's so sharp still, though. It's incredible. And I told James this story that he used to eat lunch with the coaching staff at the same place that my dad would eat with his friends.
Uh-huh.
They would always hand out all these little tidbits and things like that. And so much of not just my sports view and my basketball view, but even my life and worldview has been shaped by those men.
Sure.
Like growing up watching Jerry Sloan, everything like that. And so I think I share that because it's really an asset. And it was even fun talking to Bowler today about that and hearing those memories and just how rich the sports history is here in Salt Lake City, but also like how rough it's been for I think everybody outside of BYU fans last week. With the Jazz being down, it's great to have the Mammoth in town, but like it'd be nice if they were in the playoffs. The Utes were miserable last year. I think even everybody up on the hill is like very hyper aware of the fact like we got to get this fixed, right? And so you hope that something like that happens tonight to get this thing jump started, right? And Jaylen Brown coming back immediately would be a huge, huge thing. I think to that end, it's probably what's not going to happen, right?
Well, that would be. I mean, Jalen's 28 and he's awesome. I mean, if I'm Brad Stevens, I understand. So if they hadn't made the 2 transactions they've made, because they've already saved over $200 million in luxury tax with Porzingis and Holiday off the books, 28 years old for a player like Jaylen Brown is a player that everybody is trying to go after. If I'm Brad Stevens, I don't do it, but there have been enough reports to indicate. And here's the other thing. While everyone in this ecosystem knows each other, there's an intimate relationship between the Ainges and Brad Stevens. Danny hired Brad. Brad kept Austin on staff. And also, I think Will spent, at least 1, if not 2 years as the lead assistant in Boston under Udoka. So he's coached Jaylen before. There's natural synergies there. The question is, can you get it done and hold on to Markkanen, Kessler, and 5? To me, that's paramount.
Right.
Because what's the point if you trade Markkanen to Boston and a couple of draft picks to Jaylen? You're in the same place. You're nowhere moving forward. It only makes sense if they can hold on to Walker, if they can hold on to Lowry, if they can hold on to 5. As it is, if I had to give you my best guess, based off of what Austin said in response to Sean's question, they're not going to manipulate minutes to tank and to get the best draft position possible. They still have to get the best draft position possible next year. Top 8 protected pick goes to Oklahoma City because, of course, it does. And that's the last thing you want to do at this stage of a roster construct if you're the Jazz, is to let go of that asset. So if I had to give you my guess, I think they're going to put their best foot forward next year, but it's all going to be young players who aren't ready to win, and they're going to be really bad next year. But hopefully, to Brian's point tonight, they just do something to get in the game, man. Like, invigorate this fan base a little bit. There's so many Jazz fans right now just disillusioned with the entire process. Do something tonight to at least provide some excitement.
I like Knippel, but it's just that's not a sell.
Right. No, I agree.
No, we did like, who do you like the best, who do you like the least, who you lukewarm on, who do you most medium like? It's Knippel for me. It's like, I don't hate him, but it's not enough for number 5.
Right.
Like, if you had him at 21, fantastic.
Yeah.
5, you got to shoot for a higher upside.
No,
there.
it's kind of like when you have to enter the dating pool in your 40s, and you go on all these dates, and you're like, you know what? No. That was aggressively fine. You're fine. Good luck. I got out of the house. I got a meal, and you're great. Good luck. All right, so it's like, the steak was fine.
I may never see you again, but I wish you the best.
I had a nice butter, salad, butter lettuce salad. It was enjoyable, but I'm going this way. You're going. It was fine. A lovely wedge. Got out of the house, had dinner.
Sat on the patio.
Knippel is a date from somebody on an app that was like, it was fine. It was fine. You could do worse, but you could do a lot better.
Aggressively fine.
Aggressively fine.
By the way, I got some intel from my brother, who is a bishop, on the whole 1-year mission.
Oh,
thing.
do tell.
So he says he is not aware, as a bishop, of any kind of change to the length of mission.
Okay.
Bryan also brought up that Ryder's brother served a 1-year mission.
Walker Lyons did the same thing before
Is
he went to USC.
Is he the USC? Okay, gotcha.
So apparently there is some, hey, you can be considered a full-time missionary, but only serve for 1 year. Some concessions that can be made, some accommodations that can be made. Or, as we've seen on Twitter, a bunch of angry people saying, well, it's voluntary, it's not prison, they can leave whenever they want. So maybe he says, I'll serve a 2-year mission. I'm going to say to my mission president, I'm going home now, thank you.
I just wish this mindset existed when I was a kid. Like, you can leave whenever you want? What? That's how it goes? No, look, in every culture, you make exceptions for things that you deeply believe. It's like Shane Gillis talks about football fans in the South that, we're part of the Confederate Army. And like, we're not going to be nice to them until we find out they're good at football, then roll tide. Like, everybody makes exceptions for things that they deeply believe. And maybe the new thing with the LDS culture is 2 years for everybody. But if you can throw a football, we're going to send you to a mission president that's a huge BYU fan.
I don't know why so many people come up so disillusioned that life is fair and equal, because it is not.
It's not. Nope.
And if you can throw a football 65, 70 yards, guess what? Good things are going to come your way. And if one of those good things includes getting a year-long mission,
for sure,
good for you. Go ahead, take it.
Yeah,
I don't hate this.
Steve Young talks about it all the time. He wanted to serve a mission, but people around him said, you are awesome at this. And if you want to do something in the name of the religion to bring awareness, go win a freaking Super Bowl and be one of the best quarterbacks of all time. It's a good point. meritocracy exists. Life is not fair and equal. If you're talented in certain areas, you actually have some things to your advantage that other people that are not talented just don't. This is part of the deal.
To your point, most dates are very average.
That's fine. I had a nice sandwich, a good salmon.
And we'll end it on this, but I also feel obliged to say no one is begrudging the kid for only serving 1 year of
For
a mission,
sure.
too.
For
Like
sure.
he's taking a year to voluntarily do goodwill in the way that he wants to do goodwill for his God, his religion, his church. Good for him.
Sure.
It doesn't matter if it's 1 year less than a lot of people did.
It's 1 year more than most people will ever do.
Absolutely.
If you want to look at it that way.
So good for him.
Sure.
And good for BYU and then the church for letting him serve for as long as he wants to, and also kind of serves their own purposes.
Well
Arguably,
said,
he did.
Amen.
He did a year's worth of work just going on McAfee and talking about an LDS mission.
There you go. Yeah.
So,
as did Austin Colley, by the way, if you caught that clip, talking about educating Pat on the church and Mormon culture. What's coming up on the drive?
Well, we're gonna have Bowler on. We are. We'll cover some other
Doing
things.
double duty today.
Yep,
Craig
balling
Wojak.
with
Good for
Bowler.
him.
we got the summer league aspect for you.
There we go. No, and I remember those Eastside days. I remember when the air conditioning broke and how miserable it was. Rafael Barlow for his draft board, Tim Bontemps, who was live at the draft, and then we got our guy Spencer Litton from BYU TV, who I will take to task today about the way they're spinning this story. So we're gonna have a fun show.
Absolutely. Feel free to use my my brother, the intel I got from my brother. That,
I like it.
No one is aware of a change in length of missions, but here we go.
James is very proud of his investigative reporting on this.
Well, Bishop would know. I mean,
they have access to the handbook, so I was like, "Hey, what does it say?"
I like it.
By the way, speaking of the summer league, we did have a correct answer. It was Carl Malone versus Tom Chambers summer league fight at East High School. We'll get you tickets to Monster Jam World Finals coming up. Thank you, Texter, for texting that in. The Drive with Spence Checketts is next on ESPN 700 92.1 FM. Proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.